Chapter 824. A resplendent golden light shot out along with Meng Tai's laughter. Heaven-breaking 13 slashes. The 13th move. If the first 12 moves were said to be a gradual increase in strength, then the 13th move was an explosive leap. The reason why the heaven-breaking 13 slashes was so powerful was because of the 13th move. After the accumulation of the blade aura from the first 12 moves, the 13th move would be unleashed in one go. Meng Tai's strength was only at the level of a late-stage 4-star king before he used the heaven-breaking 13 slashes. But after using it, his strength had increased greatly, reaching the peak of the 4-star king level. The corresponding strength of a late-stage 4-star king could only be considered mid-tier among the 4-star kings. It was not even considered upper tier, let alone the peak. The 13th move of the heaven-breaking 13 slashes was enough to sweep through 4-star kings. It would be hard for anyone in the same realm to contend against it. Therefore, when the 13th slash was executed, Meng Tai was laughing heartily. He was in a very good mood. In the Star Continent, the only one who could contend against him, the Black Biao King, was about to be slain by his saber. He wanted to prove to everyone that he, Meng Tai, as the supreme king of the Star Continent, was also supreme and invincible. In the Blue Cloud Mountain range, Yixing used his void-shattering god eyes to observe from afar. He had already taken out his crimson flame bow and knocked the last void-shattering arrow, ready to shoot at any time. The strength that Meng Tai had erupted with at this moment had already made Yixing want to make a move. However, the void-shattering god eyes vision was extremely sharp. When Meng Tai attacked, Yixing noticed that the Black Tiger King's aura did not panic at all, and his expression was also very calm. Facing Meng Tai's attack, the Black Tiger King did not show any fear. Instead, he sneered. Yixing was surprised. Looking at the Black Tiger King's performance, he seemed to have the confidence to block Meng Tai's attack. This made Yixing suppress the thought of shooting the void-shattering arrow. In the sky above the Dark Star Island, the Black Tiger King sneered facing Meng Tai's terrifying attack. You've already improved. Do you think I, the Black Tiger King, can't compare to you? You should also experience my sex ultimate move. Black Dragon 9 Styles. As he spoke, the Black Tiger King's move changed, and his fist turned into a palm as he pushed out. At this moment, the Black Panther King's aura skyrocketed, erupting with a pressure that caused one's heart to palpitate. Vaguely, 9 black dragon silhouettes appeared, coiling around the Black Panther King's body. Following the Black Tiger King's push, 2 black dragon phantoms instantly materialized and charged forward. The black dragon's silhouette only gave off an oppressive aura. However, when the black dragon's silhouette materialized, its oppressive aura had already solidified. Even the surrounding space was pushed aside and solidified. Bang bang! The 2 black dragons collided with the terrifying saber aura at the same time, resulting in an earth-shaking explosion. This slash was enough to sweep through 4-star kings. Some ordinary 4-star kings wouldn't even be able to block this slash and would be chopped down. However, before the 2 black dragons, this terrifying slash was completely destroyed in the blink of an eye. What? How could this be? The kings of the Dayuan dynasty were all shocked. The most shocked was none other than the supreme king, Meng Tai. He knew how powerful the last move of the heaven-breaking 13 slashes was. Originally, Meng Tai thought that he was invincible and didn't have much motivation to improve his strength. However, after knowing that the Black Panther King could contend against him, Meng Tai's fighting spirit was reignited. Since he was able to become a 4-star king, he was already one of the top geniuses of the Star Continent. Moreover, he had already cultivated the heaven-breaking 13 slashes to a critical point. He was only one step away from completing the 13 slashes. Under the pressure of the Black Panther King, he finally took that step and completed the heaven-breaking 13 slashes, greatly increasing his strength. He originally thought that after completing the 13th slash, he would be able to win against the Black Panther King. Who would have thought that the Black Panther King's strength would increase greatly in these 2 years, and he would have mastered a martial art that was even more heaven-defying than the heaven-breaking 13 slashes. The 9 styles of the Black Dragon was the Dark Star Sect's supreme martial art. Zhua Hongyuan had learned it from the Dark Star Divine Palace. Even in the Dark Star Divine Palace, the 9 styles of the Black Dragon was a first-class upper-grade black martial art. Its power was not inferior to that of a supreme-grade black martial art. Naturally, it was much more powerful than the heaven-breaking 13 slashes, which was considered powerful in the Star Continent. After all, The heaven-breaking 13 slashes could only be considered as ordinary amongst high-grade profound martial arts in the Dark Star Divine Palace. The 9 styles of the Black Dragon had always been a martial art exclusive to the sect master of the Dark Star sect. Only the sect master had the qualifications to cultivate it. However, 2 years ago, Yi Xing, the Fiend Star, had fallen, and the young sect master, Zhuo Yupeng, had been possessed. The Dark Star sect could be said to be in a precarious situation. In order to deal with the future dangers of the Dark Star sect, the Star Dragon King and the Sovereign Sect's King Xiaomu had discussed and decided to let the Red Panther King cultivate the 9 styles of the Black Dragon. Back then, Zhuo Hongyuan hadn't been able to complete the 9 styles of the Black Dragon. He had only cultivated it to the level of 4 Dragon Strike. The 9 styles of the Black Dragon that he had left behind was only an incomplete version. The more powerful a martial art was, the more difficult it was to cultivate. Other than Zhuo Hongyuan, none of the Dark Star sect masters had ever cultivated the 9 styles of the Black Dragon. Most of them had only cultivated 1 style, and a few had cultivated 2 styles. For example, the Star Dragon King and King Xiaomu had only cultivated 1 style and could only attack 1 Black Dragon. The fact that the Black Panther King was able to comprehend the Dark Force to its peak when he was a 3-star king showed how high his comprehension ability was. His 9 styles of the Black Dragon was indeed much faster than the Star Dragon King and King Xiaomu. In just 2 years, he had cultivated 2 styles. From what had happened today, the Star Dragon King and King Xiaomu's decision to let the Black Panther King cultivate the 9 styles of the Black Dragon was clearly a wise decision. The 2 Black Dragons that the Black Panther King had attacked with were 300 meters long. The dragon's aura was so strong that it was almost material. It made the Black Panther King look even more dignified, giving off a feeling that one couldn't look straight at him. Meng Tai, what kind of bullshit title is this? It's time for today to end. Dang. The Black Panther King shouted and continued to use the 9 styles of the Black Dragon. The 2 Black Dragons roared and rushed toward Meng Tai. Although there was shock in Meng Tai's eyes, he didn't panic. His eyes were very calm. You want to kill me? You're still far from it. Meng Tai shouted coldly. He put away his dark weapon and formed a hand seal with both hands. Whoosh! A green sword flew out of thin air. As soon as the sword appeared, it shone brightly, illuminating the entire sky. The sword light flashed and turned into a huge green dragon. The green dragon's length exceeded 300 meters. It was close to 1,000 meters. It formed a circle and protected Meng Tai in the middle. Boom! Boom! In less than a blink of an eye, the 2 Black Dragons arrived in front of Meng Tai. The green dragon formed by the green sword immediately stretched out its claws. Rip! The green dragon's claws contained terrifying power. The 2 Black Dragons were instantly torn apart. However, sweat faintly appeared on Meng Tai's forehead. The green dragon seemed to be under his control, but it was very strenuous for him to do so. After blocking the attacks of the 2 Black Dragons, Meng Tai shouted, "What are you waiting for? Slaughter them all." Chapter 825. After Meng Tai yelled at the Dayuan dynasty martial artists, he turned to the Black Tiger King and smiled coldly. Hee hee. Black Tiger, my Dayuan dynasty's 10,000 years of accumulation isn't something you can imagine. With the dynasty's dragon luck protecting me, even a 5-star king can't do anything to me, let alone you. Meng Tai's expression was filled with pride. The Dayuan dynasty had ruled the Star Continent for 10,000 years. For 10,000 years, the Dayuan dynasty was the orthodox and was recognized by the martial artists of the Star Continent. Moreover, every time the Outer Realm Star Continent opened, it was the Dayuan dynasty's core martial artists who took the Star Continent's fate. As time passed, the dynasty accumulated a huge amount of fate. This was the dynasty's dragon luck. To destroy a dynasty, one must first destroy its fate. When Yi Xing was in the Star Continent, he had taken the Star Continent's fate the last time the Outer Realm Star Continent opened, which had damaged the Dayuan dynasty's dragon luck. However, the Dayuan dynasty's fate that had been accumulated for 10,000 years was too thick. When there was a 4-star king, it was also when the dynasty's dragon luck was at its peak. A single destruction was unable to shake its foundation. Moreover, in these 2 years when Yi Xing wasn't in the Star Continent, the Dark Star sect had been suppressed to the point that they had to defend their headquarters. The Dayuan dynasty's control over the Star Continent had greatly increased, and its fate had recovered. Therefore, the dynasty's dragon luck that Meng Tai had taken out was extremely powerful, reaching the level of a 5-star king. The dynasty's capital had a fate-gathering altar. Only at the altar could the dynasty's dragon luck be controlled freely. If the dragon luck was taken out of the capital, it would be extremely difficult to control it. Although Meng Tai was a 4-star king, controlling the dynasty's dragon luck that was equivalent to a 5-star king was still quite strenuous. He could only use it for defense and couldn't control its attack. As for the current situation, Meng Tai only needed to defend against the Black Tiger King's attack. In Meng Tai's opinion, the Dark Star sect's true enemy was the Black Tiger King. As long as he delayed the Black Tiger King, the Dayuan dynasty still had more than 60 kings, including a few 3-star kings. On the other hand, the Dark Star sect only had a dozen or so kings, and only one 3-star king. Once the battle started, the Dark Star sect would definitely be crushed. Under Meng Tai's order, the 60 kings all flew out of the flying ship. They all exploded with terrifying auras as they looked at the Dark Star sect's martial artists with cold smiles on their faces. The kings of the Dark Star sect also flew into the sky. The sect leader, Star Dragon King, fixed his gaze on Zhuo Yupeng. Looking at his son, there was no warmth on his face, only extreme killing intent. "Give me back Peng Er's life." Zhuo Yu angrily. "Zhuo Mu. King 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 and king king. King. King 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 king." 9 moves. Outside of King Xiao Mu's body, 9 indistinct shadows of black dragons instantly appeared. With a push of his palm, one of the black dragons rushed out and clawed at Zhuo Yupeng's head. "King king, SS king king. SSSSS king king. S king. S king 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 king. S king 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 king. King 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 king." Wei Qingxian yelled, "Extreme Ice Seal." Wei Qingxian pushed her palms forward, and the air in front of her turned into cold mist. Ice crystals appeared in the air. The cold mist and ice crystals moved thousands of meters forward at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. More than half of the kings of the Great Yuan dynasty were within this range. Their bodies trembled, and they were instantly covered by ice crystals, turning into ice sculptures. Even the astral light attacks from the few 3-star kings were no exception, and they were all frozen by the ice crystals. The weaker 1-star kings were frozen by the ice crystals and fell from the sky. As for the 3-star kings, they rushed out of the ice sculptures in the blink of an eye. Their faces were pale, and their bodies were trembling from the cold. Their eyes were filled with shock. Many kings of the Great Yuan dynasty also struggled out of the ice sculptures. However, they were stronger than the kings of the Great Yuan dynasty, and they paid a higher price. They were all pale, and they spat out mouthfuls of blood. Wei Qingxuan's move had dealt with more than half of the kings of the Great Yuan dynasty. She had also heavily injured more than 10 people. As for the remaining kings of the Great Yuan dynasty, they were still falling from the ice sculptures. It looked like they were in grave danger. Wei Qingxuan's cultivation was only at the first level of the Star Sea realm. A mere 1-star king had actually exploded with such terrifying strength. Whether it was the Dark Star sect or the Great Yuan dynasty's martial artists, they all sucked in a breath of cold air, greatly shocked. As for Yi Xing, who was watching from afar with his void-breaking god eyes, he had already expected this. The power of the sovereign bloodline in Wei Qingxuan's body was too strong. When used on any martial arts, the power would become extremely terrifying. That extreme ice seal was something that even the strongest kings of the 4 stars couldn't block. Wei Qingxuan's strength seemed to be even stronger than the Black Biao kings. The kings of the Great Yuan dynasty were all shocked by Wei Qingxuan's move. Fear rose in their hearts, and they didn't dare to fight anymore. They hurriedly retreated. Only Zhuo Yupeng didn't retreat. Facing King Xiao Mu's attack, he instantly counterattacked. Boom! Zhuo Yupeng's 5 fingers formed a claw and grabbed at the black dragon's body. A claw aura instantly enlarged, and the black dragon's body was crushed by this claw. Then, the 5 fingers pressed down and rapidly shrunk, grabbing at King Xiao Mu's head. In the blink of an eye, Zhuo Yupeng's attack had caused King Xiao Mu to feel a fatal threat. Although the giant claw shrunk rapidly, its power didn't change. As it descended, the space below collapsed layer by layer. Before the claw arrived, King Xiao Mu already felt a terrifying pressure descend. It was as if the space had solidified, making it impossible for him to dodge. The claw's power was so terrifying that if it grabbed his head, it would definitely split open and he would die in one strike. Under the threat of death, King Xiaomu's potential completely erupted. The astral energy within his body burned, and his aura instantly soared. He forcefully broke through the compressed space and rushed to the side. King Xiaomu's strength was already at the peak of the 3 stars kings. At this moment, his strength was unleashed, and his desire to live almost caused him to erupt with the speed of a 4 stars king. However, compared to Zhuo Yupeng's claw, it was still a bit too slow. Prince Filial Wood's body was bent forward. He had barely passed his head when Prince Filial Wood's claw had already landed on his shoulder. Rip! King Xiaomu's entire arm was instantly ripped off by this claw. His body was heavily injured, and he fiercely fell to the ground. He was already vomiting blood in the air. Zhuo Yupeng's attack also shocked the Dark Star Sect's martial artists. They never expected that Zhuo Yupeng, who was just a High Lord 2 years ago, would have such heaven-defying strength now. Chapter 826. Even Yi Xing, who had expected Zhuo Yupeng's strength, was surprised. Although Zhuo Yupeng did not kill King Xiaomu, the strength that Zhuo Yupeng displayed was not inferior to Wei Qingxian in Yi Xing's eyes. Although Wei Qingxian dealt with dozens of kings in one move and looked powerful, Wei Qingxuan's move was originally a wide-range attack. As for Zhuo Yupeng, Yi Xing could naturally see that the previous attack was just a casual one. He had not used his true strength yet. Originally, he thought that the strongest person in the Dayuan dynasty was the Supreme King Meng Tai. Unexpectedly, the strongest person was Zhuo Yupeng. This made Yi Xing secretly glad that he had not been in a hurry to shoot the void-piercing arrow. This last void-piercing arrow should have been used to deal with Zhuo Yupeng. Zhuo Yupeng did not continue to pursue after severely injuring King Xiaomu. Instead, his gaze turned and fell on Wei Qingxian in the distance. The kings of the Dayuan dynasty had all retreated. Only Zhuo Yupeng's aura was still soaring. Wei Qingxuan's gaze also looked at Zhuo Yupeng. You are the beauty that this body of mine can't forget. Not bad. You are indeed a peerless beauty. I really did not expect you to have such powerful strength. Hee hee. Zhuo Yupeng laughed and said, This body of mine covets your beauty and wants to sleep with you. However, I am interested in the strength in your body and want to eat you. Hee hee. As he spoke, Zhuo Yupeng licked his lips and his voice became sharper and sharper. A mere 1-star king's body contains such powerful strength. Your bloodline must be heaven-defying. After eating you, I will definitely be able to recover to a higher level of cultivation and become the ruler of the star continent. At this moment, waves of black aura surged out from Zhuo Yupeng. His entire body was shrouded in black fog. The black fog spread out and was 1,000 feet in size. Its shape was like the head of an evil spirit. Together with Zhuo Yupeng's sharp voice, it was like a devil had descended. It was a terrifying feeling. The kings of the Great Yuan dynasty had never seen Zhuo Yupeng in such a state before. Looking at the black fog ghost in the sky, they all felt fear in their hearts. At this moment, the only one who could see Zhuo Yupeng's body clearly was Yi Xing, who was thousands of miles away. The black fog surrounding Zhuo Yupeng's body naturally could not block the Void Breaker God Eye's vision. The current Zhuo Yupeng was completely different from his normal state. His skin was completely covered by a layer of black runes. Yi Xing could see that the black runes contained a powerful energy. Furthermore, it caused Zhuo Yupeng's body to become as tough as a profound armament. A third eye opened on Zhuo Yupeng's forehead. The eyeball was grayish-white, without any hint of life. Clearly, it wasn't a normal martial path heavenly eye, but a kind of eye technique. This was one of the eye techniques of the realm of death, the Eye of Death. As soon as Zhuo Yupeng opened Azura's eye, not only did his eyesight become much stronger, even his senses became sharper. He immediately sensed that someone was watching him. Under normal circumstances, Zhuo Yupeng would not suspect anything when he felt this gaze. However, he was now in the black fog, and ordinary warriors could not see him at all. Being watched at this time naturally aroused Zhuo Yupeng's vigilance. However, Zhuo Yupeng immediately felt relieved because a third eye opened in the center of Wei Qingxuan's forehead. The eyeball was constantly changing and rotating. Obviously, it was not a normal martial path heavenly eye, but a kind of eye technique, which penetrated the black fog and saw him. Thinking of this, Zhuo Yupeng naturally dispelled the doubts in his heart. Wei Qingxuan's eye technique was inherited from the bloodline memory. It was a god-level eye technique of the Holy Land Samsara Palace, the Samsara Divine Eye. Although the Samsara Divine Eye could not penetrate layers of hollow like the Void Breaker God Eyes, it could easily see through the black fog outside Zhuo Yupeng's body. Zhuo Yupeng had been possessed by the King of Death Spirit, so he was no longer a normal human being. Or rather, he was not a human being at all. Whether for justice or selfishness, Wei Qingxian wanted to kill Zhuo Yupeng. Go to hell! The Samsara Divine Eye locked onto Zhuo Yupeng's body. Wei Qingxian yelled and rushed over like a flash of light. At the same time, Wei Qingxian had already slapped out. A mist-like palm print moved faster than her body and slapped into the black fog in an instant. The mist-like palm print was extremely and cold. Wherever it passed, the void was frozen. Wei Qingxuan's previous palm print had spread the cold air over thousands of meters and attacked dozens of kings. Now, the amount of cold air was not reduced. Instead, it increased and condensed into only one palm print. One could imagine how terrifying this palm print was. 3 Star Kings could escape from the previous wide-range attacks. However, if they were hit by this palm print, they would definitely die. Even 4 Star Kings could not resist it. Hee hee. Zhuo Yupeng's laughter came out of the black fog. Although Wei Qingxuan's palm print was terrifying, Zhuo Yupeng did not take it seriously. He rushed toward the palm print. His body was his most powerful weapon. Bang! The mist-like palm print hit Zhuo Yupeng and immediately froze him. However, Zhuo Yupeng's body continued to shoot forward. The layer of ice outside his body crumbled. It can't freeze you? Wei Qingxuan's eyes were filled with surprise. Her expression immediately became serious. The Dark Star Sect's martial artists were also nervous. Now, the Black Tiger King and Meng Tai were locked in a stalemate. Wei Qingxian had burst out with such terrifying strength. She had completely become the Dark Star Sect's savior. They had all seen Zhuo Yupeng's strength. If Wei Qingxian was defeated, the Dark Star Sect would have no way to survive. Therefore, this battle was the battle of the Dark Star Sect's destiny. Seeing that Wei Qingxuan's cold air could not freeze Zhuo Yupeng, the Dark Star Sect's martial artists became nervous. Little beauty, you are indeed powerful. However, it's a pity that you are still a little weaker than me. Hee. Zhuo Yupeng sneered. His 10 fingers suddenly lengthened and sharp claws grew out of his fingertips. They were like blades that shone with a cold light. Swoosh 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 swoosh. In the blink of an eye, Zhuo Yupeng rushed in front of Wei Qingxian. His hands formed into claws and clawed continuously. In the blink of an eye, countless claw prints had struck out. The claw prints tore the void apart and enveloped Wei Qingxian in all directions. Wei Qingxian pushed the bloodline power in her body to the limit. Her palms turned into fists. In an instant, streaks of icy fist energy attacked in all directions and collided with the claw prints. Although Wei Qingxuan's strength was powerful, she was still at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation. Moreover, she cultivated the Dark Star Xian body, and her physical body was not as strong as her opponent's. In less than 30 moves, she was at a disadvantage. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged nearly 30 moves and it had only been 2 to 3 breaths of time. Seeing that her opponent's physical body was powerful, Wei Qingxian immediately gave up on close combat. She retreated quickly and shouted, "Light of Reincarnation!" Chapter 827. Whoosh! A multicolored light shot out from Wei Qingxuan's Samsara Divine Eye. The Samsara Divine Eye was an offensive eye technique. Although it wasn't as powerful as the void-breaking Divine Eye, it was still an extremely powerful attack. The power of this Samsara Divine Eye was terrifying. Even an ordinary 5-star king wouldn't be able to block it. In other words, if Meng Tai faced Wei Qingxuan's Samsara Divine Eye, he might not be able to block it even with his Dynasty Dragon luck. The attack power of a 5-star king was more than enough to kill a 4-star king. The Black Tiger King's life would be in danger if he faced this Samsara Divine Eye. However, Zhuo Yupeng was clearly stronger than the Black Tiger King and Meng Tai. Wei Qingxuan's Samsara Divine Eye didn't scare him away. Wei Qingxian retreated, but Zhuo Yupeng chased after her like a shadow. At the same time he shouted, "Death Ray!" Whoosh! Zhua Yupeng's eyes of death also shot out a ray of light. This was a pitch-black ray of light, but it contained a terrifying penetrative power. The moment the death ray appeared, the void in front of it was instantly pierced through. The death ray actually pierced through the void, directly passing through the samsara divine eye and appearing in front of Wei Qingxian in an instant. Puff! The death ray struck Wei Qingxuan's body. The profound grade inner armor was instantly pierced through like it was nothing. Although the death ray was only an extremely thin thread, its power was terrifying. The moment it pierced through Wei Qingxuan's body, it exploded and destroyed a large amount of flesh. A bowl-sized hole appeared in Wei Qingxuan's chest. The Dark Star sect's martial artists all cried out in alarm, their expressions changing. If it were a low-grade king body, such an injury wouldn't be fatal, but it would still cause great damage to their vitality. They would lose their ability to fight for a short period of time and be at the mercy of others. When the death ray struck Wei Qingxian, the Samsara Divine Eye also struck Zhua Yupeng. At this instant, the dark runes on Zhua Yupeng's body emitted a resplendent light that collided with the light of reincarnation. Sparks flew in all directions, and Zhua Yupeng's body was sent flying by the terrifying power contained within the light of reincarnation. However, Zhua Yupeng only flew for 1,000 meters before stabilizing his body. At this time, the black fog outside his body was dispersed by the light of reincarnation, and his body was clearly visible to everyone. Zhua Yupeng patted his body and revealed a devilish smile. A very powerful attack. Unfortunately, it's still a little lacking. If you were a 2-star king, you would definitely be able to kill me. However, you aren't. Therefore, you can only become my storage item. Ha 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 ha. While Zhua Yupeng was speaking, the wound on Wei Qingxuan's chest had already healed. Yi Xing's prediction was correct. Wei Qingxian had indeed constructed an immortal body. This bit of injury was nothing to her. However, Wei Qingxuan's expression was grim. Zhua Yupeng's physical body was too powerful. Her light of reincarnation could kill a 4-star king, and even a 5-star king would be severely injured. However, Zhua Yupeng had taken it head-on. As her trump card, the light of reincarnation could not be used multiple times. With her current cultivation, she could only use the light of reincarnation 3 times at most. Judging from Zhua Yupeng's physical defense, the chances of killing him after using the light of reincarnation 3 times were not high. In fact, it might even be difficult to severely injure him. Even Yi Xing's void-piercing arrow could reach the level of a 5-star king. However, even he did not have the confidence to kill Zhua Yupeng in one shot. It was precisely because of this that Yi Xing was not in a hurry to use the void-piercing arrow. There was only one void-piercing arrow. He was waiting for an opportunity to kill Zhua Yupeng in one shot. After watching the exchange between Wei Qingxian and Zhua Yupeng, Yi Xing had already found such an opportunity. He only needed to wait for the opportunity to deal a fatal blow to Zhua Yupeng. Above Dark Star Island, the martial artists of the Dark Star sect and the Great Yuan dynasty were watching from afar. There were only 4 people fighting in the air. The Black Biao King was fighting Meng Tai, while Wei Qingxian was fighting Zhua Yupeng. Meng Tai was in an invincible position with the dynasty's draconic luck protecting him. He took the initiative to counterattack the Black Biao King, causing the Black Biao King to be unable to pay attention to the battle between Wei Qingxian and Zhua Yupeng. After a short pause between Wei Qingxian and Zhua Yupeng charged toward Wei Qingxian again. Ghost-rending soul-chasing claw. Before Zhua Yupeng's body arrived, numerous claw marks attacked first. Wei Qingxian knew that she would not be able to gain any advantage in a head-on clash with Zhua Yupeng. She could only retreat and use her reincarnation divine eye again. The dazzling light of reincarnation shot out with terrifying power towards Zhua Yupeng. This is the moment. In the Azure Cloud Mountain range, Yi Xing smiled faintly and shot out the void-piercing arrow in his hand. Hee hee. Zhua Yupeng sneered and ignored the attack of the light of reincarnation. The death eye on his forehead blinked and shot out a death ray. The death ray did not collide with the light of reincarnation. It pierced through the void and shot toward Wei Qingxuan's body. Although the death ray was not as powerful as the light of reincarnation, its ability to pierce through the void was extremely difficult to deal with. Although Wei Qingxian had a supreme-grade imperial body and an immortal body, no one was willing to have a big hole in their body. Moreover, the immortal body also consumed vitality to heal injuries. Once the vitality was exhausted, the immortal body would become an ordinary body. Wei Qingxian immediately took out a green shield in front of her. It was a defensive dark weapon. Bang! The death ray hit the green shield and made a loud sound. However, it did not penetrate it in the end. The huge force sent Wei Qingxian and her shield flying thousands of meters away. The light of reincarnation hit Zhuo Yupeng's body at the same time as the death ray hit the green shield. However, Zhuo Yupeng sneered. He was very confident in his body's defense and was not afraid of the light of reincarnation. The black runes on Zhuo Yupeng's body shone brightly and collided with the light of reincarnation. Sparks flew in all directions. The light of reincarnation could not penetrate it and only sent Zhuo Yupeng flying. However, at this moment, the void in front of Zhuo Yupeng suddenly rippled like a stone thrown into a calm water surface. At the center of the ripples, a silver-white arrow shot out. The speed of the silver-white arrow was like a ray of light. It was more than 10 times faster than Zhuo Yupeng's retreating speed. As soon as it appeared, it had already crossed the void and shot toward Zhuo Yupeng's head. The black runes on Zhuo Yupeng's body had just defended against the light of reincarnation. It was the moment when his defense was at its weakest. The void-piercing arrow shot by Yi Xing had the offensive power of a peak 5-star king. It was much stronger than Wei Qingxuan's light of reincarnation. Most importantly, the arrow intent contained in the void-piercing arrow had an incomparably terrifying penetrating power. Therefore, the black runes on Zhuo Yupeng's body were instantly penetrated. The void-piercing arrow went through Zhuo Yupeng's forehead and came out from the back of his head. It pierced a fist-sized hole in Zhuo Yupeng's head and instantly destroyed the flesh and blood inside. Chapter 828. Wei Qingxuan's expression froze. Shocked. The martial artists of the Dark Star sect and the Great Yuan dynasty were also stunned. The silver-white arrow had appeared too suddenly. It had appeared out of nowhere, and its power was terrifying. Even Wei Qingxuan's light of samsara was unable to break through Zhuo Yupeng's defense. The silver-white arrow had actually pierced through Zhuo Yupeng's head. Zhuo Yupeng's body was affected by the power of the silver-white arrow, and he retreated even faster in the air as he let out an ear-piercing scream of pain. This scream did not come from Zhuo Yupeng's mouth. Instead, it came from a black shadow that rushed out of Zhuo Yupeng's head. The black shadow twisted, and its mouth was stretched longer than its body as it let out a painful scream. This was the Death Spirit King's soul. As a 7-star Death Spirit King, his soul would not be destroyed so easily. Yi Xing's silver-white arrow had the power of a peak 5-star king, but it still could not hurt the 7-star Death Spirit King's soul. However, the 7-star Death Spirit King's body had been possessed by Zhuo Yupeng, and his body was only a low-tier king body. When the flesh in his head was destroyed, it was naturally fatal. Therefore his body died instantly. The 7-star Death Spirit King had possessed Zhuo Yupeng's body for 2 years, and his soul and body had already merged together. Although his soul had not been destroyed, he could still feel the pain of his body dying. The pain of death was so intense that even the 7-star Death Spirit King's soul had been damaged. The scream of the 7-star Death Spirit King's soul was ear-piercing, and it pierced through people's souls. Whether it was the martial artists of the Dark Star sect or the Great Yuan dynasty, they all felt a sharp pain in their minds. Some of the weaker venerables were even bleeding from their 7 orifices. Fortunately, the Dark Star sect had moved all the martial artists below the venerable realm into the Dark Star Palace. Otherwise, without the protection of the formation, they would have been killed by the 7-star Death Spirit King's soul howl. After one breath, the 7-star Death Spirit King stopped screaming and screamed, "Who did it? Who was the one who shot him in the dark?" When the 7-star Death Spirit King was still attached to his physical body, he was still afraid of the power of that silver-white arrow for the sake of his physical body's safety. However, at this moment, his physical body was already destroyed, and his soul was a mental body. Normal attacks would not be able to harm him at all. Even if the silver-white arrow's power reached the level of a peak 5-star king, he was still completely immune to it. Without a physical body, even though his soul wouldn't be able to survive for a long time, he could still find a new body to possess. Besides, before possessing a body, his soul was immune to many physical attacks. Therefore, the 7-star Death Spirit King wasn't afraid at all. The person who shot the arrow was thousands of miles away. Naturally, no one answered the 7-star Death Spirit King's question. No matter if it was the Dark Star sect's martial practitioners or the Great Yuan dynasty's martial practitioners, they all looked at each other. They did not know who had shot the silver-white arrow, nor did they know where it had come from. This was because the silver-white arrow had appeared out of nowhere without any warning. The Star Continent was only a low-level continent. The peak of martial arts was the Star Ocean realm. The arrow piercing through the void involved the attainment of the void-shattering realm. Normally, only true gods of archery could reach this level. Therefore, the martial artists of the Star Continent naturally didn't know about it. However, Wei Qingxuan's sovereign bloodline had awakened, and she had a lot of inherited memories. Therefore, she was much more knowledgeable than the martial artists of the Star Continent. As for the attainment of the void-shattering realm in archery, she naturally knew about it. True gods stood at the peak of martial arts in high-level continents. It was unlikely that they would come to a low-level continent like the Star Continent and help the Dark Star sect for no reason. Moreover, if it was a true god who shot the arrow, it wouldn't have just destroyed the physical body of the Death Spirit King. Therefore, the person who shot the arrow wasn't a true god of archery, but an arrow that contained the power of the void-shattering realm in his hand. Since this person helped the Dark Star sect, there must be a reason, and he should be related to the Dark Star sect. Being related to the Dark Star sect and an expert in archery. A figure flashed past Wei Qingxuan's mind. Yi Xing. Could it be that Yi Xing has returned? Wei Qingxian thought. She didn't believe that Yi Xing was dead, and was suspicious about the Supreme King Meng Tai killing Yi Xing. Within the Dark Star sect, the Black Biao King also didn't believe that Yi Xing was dead. At first, he had indeed believed it. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that if Meng Tai had killed Yi Xing, he would definitely have hung Yi Xing's corpse as a display of force to attack the Dark Star sect. However, the Black Biao King didn't know the level of the void-shattering realm in archery, so he naturally didn't think that it was Yi Xing who did it. Wei Qingxian thought that Yi Xing might have returned, and he might be near the Dark Star Island, so she immediately looked around. Although the Eye of Reincarnation wasn't as heaven-defying as the Divine Eye of Void-Shattering Realm, just the first layer was enough to see over 1,000,000 miles. Yi Xing was thousands of miles away, so Wei Qingxian naturally couldn't see Yi Xing. However, before she could search a large area, the soul of the Seven-Star Death Spirit King rushed towards her. The Seven-Star Death Spirit King screamed, "No matter who shot the arrow, they dared to destroy my body, so I'll find a better one." Thousands of miles away, in the Blue Cloud Mountain Range, Yi Xing was shocked. If the Seven-Star Death Spirit King possessed Wei Qingxian, it would be very bad. However, Yi Xing's heart was nervous for a moment, but he calmed down again. Supremes were legendary existences in the Dark Star Continent, and Wei Qingxian was the daughter of a Supremes. Since the Reincarnation Supremes had left the Supremes' bloodline in Wei Qingxuan's body, he must have other means of protection. It was unlikely that the soul of a Death Spirit King would possess his daughter. Before the Seven-Star Death Spirit King reached Wei Qingxian, Wei Qingxuan's gaze turned to him. "Light of Reincarnation!" Wei Qingxian shouted, and a dazzling colorful light suddenly bloomed in the Divine Eye of Reincarnation. The Seven-Star Death Spirit King's speed was fast enough, but the light of reincarnation was even faster. With a flash of light, it shot the soul of the Seven-Star Death Spirit King. Relying on his soul, the Seven-Star Death Spirit King obviously didn't take Wei Qingxuan's pupil technique seriously. Therefore he didn't dodge, thinking that the attack would have no effect on him. However, when the light of reincarnation came into contact with his soul, the Seven-Star Death Spirit King immediately let out an extremely shrill howl. The Divine Eye of Reincarnation was the pupil technique created by the Reincarnation Supremes. It contained the origin of heaven and earth. The attack of the light of reincarnation was not an ordinary attack. It could even kill a soul. The soul of the Seven-Star Death Spirit King trembled violently and shrank in an instant. Then, he quickly retreated while howling, full of fear for Wei Qingxian. Chapter 829. The light of reincarnation was extremely harmful to souls. Just one attack had caused the Seven-Star Death Spirit King to suffer. And this was because Wei Qingxuan's cultivation was not high enough. If she could raise her cultivation by 2 more levels, the light of reincarnation would be even more terrifying. One light of reincarnation would be enough to instantly kill the Seven-Star Death Spirit King. After being attacked by Wei Qingxuan's light of reincarnation, the Seven-Star Death Spirit King naturally fled in the opposite direction, which happened to be where the Dayuan dynasty martial artists were. Seeing the 7-star Death Spirit King flee, the Dark Star sect martial artists were overjoyed and cheered. On the other hand, the Dayuan dynasty martial artists were shocked. When they saw the 7-star Death Spirit King charging towards them, their faces were filled with fear. The 7-star Death Spirit King charged straight towards a 1-star king. Don't come over. The 1-star king's expression instantly turned into fear. The 7-star Death Spirit King was charging towards him, obviously wanting to possess his body. The 1-star king quickly retreated and waved his dark weapon sword at the 7-star Death Spirit King. Unfortunately, his attack was completely useless against the 7-star Death Spirit King's spiritual body. The 7-star Death Spirit King's speed was much faster than his and instantly charged into his mind. When the kings beside him saw the 7-star Death Spirit King charging over, they all ran to the side in fear. No one dared to stop him. After all, the 7-star Death Spirit King could possess anyone's body at this moment, so no one dared to provoke him. King Wu Gu, don't touch the disciples of the Meng family. In the distance, Meng Tai roared. He had used the dynasty's draconic luck to protect himself, so the Black Tiger King could not stop him. King Wu Gu was the real name of the 7-star Death Spirit King. The Dark Star sect had already spread the news that Zhuo Yupeng had been possessed by the Death Spirit King. This was not a secret. Meng Tai had worked together with Zhuo Yupeng, so he naturally knew that Zhuo Yupeng was the world of Death's King Wu Gu. The two of them had an agreement. King Wu Gu would lead the men of the Great Yuan dynasty to the Dark Star Island and destroy the Dark Star sect. As for the martial artists of the Dark Star sect, they would all belong to King Wu Gu so that he could devour their flesh and blood to strengthen his cultivation. Of course, King Dark Crow didn't tell Meng Tai that he was a 7-star Death Spirit King. Instead, he lied to Meng Tai that he was only a 3-star Death Spirit King. Otherwise, Meng Tai wouldn't have agreed to let King Dark Star Church's martial artists devour. In the past 2 years, in order to quickly recover his cultivation, King Wu Gu had slaughtered countless warriors in the Star Continent. He had even destroyed a few 2-star empires. Meng Tai knew about this, but he had only made an agreement with King Wu Gu that he was not allowed to harm the warriors of the factions directly under the Great Yuan dynasty, especially the warriors of the Meng royal family. And now, the 1-star king that King Wu Gu had possessed was a member of the Meng royal family. Furthermore, he was a genius king of the Meng royal clan, and Meng Tai's nephew. His name was Meng Yuanlai. Although Meng Yuanlia's talent wasn't as good as Meng Yuanxing's, he wasn't much inferior. Meng Tai's genius son had died at the hands of Yi Xing, so he had been grooming Meng Yuanlai as his future successor. Meng Yuanlai was already at the peak of the first-level Star Sea realm and wasn't far from breaking through to the 2-star Monarch realm. Naturally, he was valued by Meng Tai. Meng Tai hadn't expected that King Wu Gu would possess Meng Yuanlai. Zhuo Yupeng's talent was even higher than Meng Yuanxing's, so King Wu Gu was rather satisfied. He had joined forces with Meng Tai to destroy the Dark Star Church for the flesh and blood of the Dark Star Church's martial artists. However, King Wu Gu's physical body had been destroyed, and even his soul had suffered great damage. How could he still care about his agreement with Meng Tai? Originally, King Wu Gu had wanted to possess Wei Qingxian, but he had been scared out of his wits by the light of samsara. He could only settle for the next best thing, which was to find a random warrior of the Great Yuan dynasty to possess. Naturally, he had taken a fancy to Meng Yuanlai. Even though King Wu Gu's soul had suffered great damage, his willpower wasn't something a 1-star monarch realm could compare to. King Wu Gu rushed into Meng Yuanlia's body, and Meng Yuanlai struggled violently. In just a few seconds, his eyes were already glowing red. Meng Yuanlai had already been possessed and no longer existed. There was only King Wu Gu left. Whoosh! Black gas gushed out of King Wu Gu's body, and he executed an extremely fast escape technique. Like a black light, he instantly streaked across the sky and escaped far away. Meng Tai looked at King Wu Gu, who had escaped far away, and shouted angrily, "King Wu Gu, I'm going to kill you!" "Ha ha ha! Meng Tai, you'd better save your own life first." King Wu Gu's voice came from afar. His voice went from loud to soft, which showed how fast he was. "Meng Tai, where are you going?" King He Biao shouted as he chased after Meng Tai. He executed the 9 moves of the Black Dragon, and 2 Black Dragons instantly charged at Meng Tai. Although Meng Tai was furious, his heart could not help but tremble when he heard King Wu Gu's words. King Wugu's strength was stronger than Meng Tai's. Even so, King Wugu's physical body was destroyed, and his soul was damaged. He had to escape in a sorry state. King He Biao was already difficult enough for Meng Tai. Now, there was Wei Qingxian and an expert who was secretly attacking him. Meng Tai's heart was drenched in cold sweat when he thought about it. Everyone, get on the ship and retreat. Meng Tai used the dynasty's dragon luck to block King He Biao's attack as he shouted. Although Meng Tai could not use the dynasty's dragon luck to attack, his defense was already very strong. Any attack below the level of a 5-star king would not be able to shake the defense of the dragon luck at all. King He Biao's 9 moves of the Black Dragon naturally could not shake it. Seeing Meng Tai give the order to retreat, the Dayuan dynasty martial artists heaved a sigh of relief and flew toward the high-grade Mystic-class ship. At this moment, the Dark Star sect would not let go of the opportunity to beat up the Dayuan dynasty. All the kings and sovereigns flew into the sky and attacked the ship. Wei Qingxian rushed to the front and struck out with her palm. It was a palm formed by white mist and cold air. Wherever it passed, the void froze. The cold air palm landed on the azure dragon formed by the dynasty's dragon luck, causing the azure dragon to tremble slightly. Half of its body was covered in a layer of white frost. Although the azure dragon trembled and shattered the frost in an instant and was not injured, it could be seen that Wei Qingxian already had the strength to shake the dynasty's dragon luck. If she used the light of reincarnation, she could even penetrate the dynasty's dragon luck protection. Unfortunately, Wei Qingxian had already used the light of reincarnation 3 times. Before the power of the divine eye of reincarnation recovered, she would not be able to use it again. The dynasty's dragon luck surrounded the ship and blocked the attacks from all directions. Soon, all the Dayuan dynasty martial artists boarded the ship. Meng Tai controlled the ship and turned it into a stream of light and flew into the distance. Soon, it disappeared from sight. A small area of the Dark Star Island was in a mess. The formations and restrictions outside the island were all destroyed. However, there were no casualties among the Dark Star sect martial artists. Seeing the Dayuan dynasty fleeing in a sorry state, the Dark Star Island immediately erupted with cheers. As for Wei Qingxian, she continued to use the divine eye of reincarnation to search the surroundings. She had a strong premonition that Yi Xing must have returned. Chapter 830. Wei Qingxuan's search range expanded from 1,000 miles to 2,000 miles, 3,000 miles. However, Wei Qingxian did not discover Yi Xing's figure from beginning to end. As Wei Qingxuan's search range expanded, the expectation on her face gradually disappeared, and she became more and more disappointed. She began to wonder if her premonition was wrong. In the Blue Cloud Mountains, Yi Xing used his god eyes to search for the King of Death Spirit and found that the King of Death Spirit was heading north. When Yi Xing's gaze returned to the Dark Star Island, Meng Tai had already escaped with the warriors of the Dayuan dynasty. Yi Xing saw Wei Qingxian using her eye technique to search the surroundings. The two of them had a tacit understanding. Seeing Wei Qingxuan's actions, Yi Xing reacted. Wei Qingxian had probably guessed that he was the one who shot the arrows and was looking for him. Yi Xing controlled his god eyes and locked onto Wei Qingxuan's eyes. Wei Qingxian immediately sensed that there was a pair of eyes staring at her. Her senses were the most sensitive when it came to eye contact. Yi Xing, is that you? Wei Qingxian was delighted. She looked in the direction of the gaze and asked softly. Not long after, Wei Qingxian sensed that the gaze that was watching her had left. Yi Xing could not give Wei Qingxian an answer. He looked away and soon found the King of Death Spirit. Meng Tai was the supreme king of the Dayuan dynasty. He could run away, but his temple could not. After being defeated in the Dark Star Island, he would definitely return to the capital of the Dayuan dynasty. Yi Xing naturally did not care about Meng Tai's whereabouts. The King of Death Spirit was a threat to the safety of the entire star continent. Yi Xing did not know where his nest was, so he naturally had to follow him. Otherwise, if the Lord of Death Spirit had hidden himself, Yi Xing would not have been able to find him even with his void-breaking god eyes. After all, the star continent was too vast. The Death Spirit King first headed north and then turned west. The Dark Star Island was very close to the East Divine Continent. The Death Spirit King arrived at a middle-rank empire in the East Divine Continent and used the teleportation array to reach the Divine Continent Mountain. Then, He used the Class 5 teleportation array to reach the extreme north of the North Tranquil continent. Yi Xing saw the scale of the array that King of Death Soul had adjusted, so he naturally knew where he was teleported to. Finally, King of Death Soul went all the way north to the edge of the Sea of Dark Prison and entered a mountain by the sea. Inside the mountain, there was an ancient tomb. The Death Spirit King had sealed the entrance and was sleeping in a coffin. The Death Spirit King's soul had been attacked by the reincarnation light, and he was severely injured. Apparently, he needed to rest and recover. It seemed that he would stay in the ancient tomb for a while. Seeing that the Death Spirit King was not moving, Yi Xing retracted his gaze and a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. In case something went wrong and this scourge escaped from his surveillance, Yi Xing decided to set off for the North Tranquil continent and kill the Death Spirit King. After all, Yi Xing needed to use his void-breaking god eyes, and he could not keep it up all the time. Even if Yi Xing could use it all the time, he couldn't watch the King of Death in spirit all the time. If the King of Death in spirit left the ancient tomb without being monitored, it would be very difficult to find him again. Yi Xing raised his left hand, and the blue cloud wings appeared in his palm. Then, he raised his right hand, and the starfire seed appeared. In the Heavenly Bow Hall, Yi Xing had obtained 20 treasures from the stone cabinets. After handing over 10 of them to the Dark Star Temple, he still had 10 treasures from the stone cabinets. Among them, there were materials to upgrade the blue cloud wings. However, because the power of the starfire seed was not enough, it could not be integrated into the blue cloud wings. While moving in the space crack, Yi Xing's starfire seed had absorbed enough flame energy, and its grade had a qualitative breakthrough. It was more than enough to refine these materials. Among the treasures obtained in the Heavenly Bow Hall, the worst was the black level top grade. Yi Xing took out a large piece of black level top grade black gold and spent 4 hours refining it into the blue cloud wings. After absorbing the black level top grade black gold, the blue cloud wings evolved and upgraded to the black level top grade. Yi Xing kept the blue cloud wings and used his void-breaking god eyes to look at the location of the Death Spirit King. The Death Spirit King was still sleeping in the coffin. Retracting his gaze, the blue cloud wings appeared on his back and turned into a pair of huge wings. Whoosh! Yi Xing soared into the sky and traveled more than 100 miles in the blink of an eye. With the black level top grade blue cloud wings, Yi Xing's flying speed was comparable to the arrow essence body shuttling through the void. In just half a day, Yi Xing flew more than 1,000,000 miles and came to the capital of the Jianghu Empire. On the way, Yi Xing passed by the barbaric mountains and looked at the falling star sect from afar. In the past 2 years, the star continent had not been peaceful, but the barbaric mountains were uninhabited, so the disturbance did not spread here. Yi Xing had moved the falling star sect here, which was obviously a wise move. As business was more important, Yi Xing did not enter the falling star sect. Instead, he went to the nearest middle-grade empire, the Tianlang Empire, through the transmission formation in the capital of the Jianghu Empire. After another half a day, Yi Xing arrived at the capital of the Tianlang Empire and went to the Divine Continent Mountain through the transmission formation. Then, through the transmission formation in the Divine Continent Mountain, he went to the extreme north of the North Mountain continent. In the extreme north, Yi Xing was close to the place where the King of Death Soul was hiding. More than 2 hours later, he arrived outside the mountain where the King of Death Soul was hiding. Boom! The entrance of the ancient tomb that the King of Death Soul had sealed was blasted open by Yi Xing, and the whole mountain was shaking and collapsing. In the ancient tomb, the King of Death Soul jumped out of the coffin. Then, he broke through the soil and stones in front of him and rushed out like an arrow. Who is courting death? The King of Death Soul rushed out of the mountain and shouted. Just then, the King of Death Soul saw Yi Xing standing in the void, and his expression suddenly changed into surprise. Why are you here? The King of Death Soul looked as if he had seen a ghost and said in surprise, Didn't Meng Tai say that he would kill you? You are not dead? Yi Xing chuckled and said, Thanks to you, I am not dead. The King of Death Soul couldn't see through Yi Xing's cultivation base. However, 2 years ago, Yi Xing was only a 7-star reverend. In the King of Death Soul's eyes, the current Yi Xing was at most a 9-star reverend, and the body that he had possessed was a 1-star king. Therefore, he was naturally not afraid of Yi Xing. After the King of Death Soul recovered from his surprise, he chuckled and said, Meng Tai, that trash, can't even kill an astral-reaching reverend. What a good-for-nothing. But, it's fine. I can kill you myself. The King of Death Soul was quite resentful of Yi Xing. He originally wanted Yi Xing's body, but because of the black hole constellation, not only did he fail to possess Yi Xing's body, but his soul was also almost devoured by Yi Xing. Since he couldn't get this perfect body, he naturally had to destroy it. Yi Xing looked at the King of Death Spirit disdainfully and said, Meng Tai is indeed a good-for-nothing, but you're an idiot. You're even worse than Meng Tai. Apparently, you didn't learn a lesson from the arrow that destroyed your body yesterday. The King of Death Soul's expression changed drastically, and he said in shock, How is this possible? You are the one who shot that arrow? Chapter 831. Yi Xing raised his hand, took out the red flame bow, and said, You don't believe me? Then I'll do it again. Using the dark wind fire arrow spell, a black flame arrow was formed in the blink of an eye and locked onto the King of Death Soul. Feeling a strong penetrating aura, the King of Death Spirit believed that the person who destroyed his body with an arrow yesterday was Yi Xing. However, the King of Death Soul was still shocked and he said, Yesterday, the arrow suddenly shot out of the void without any warning. How did you do it? And since you were on Dark Star Island yesterday, why didn't you continue to attack me? Instead, you chased me all the way to the extreme north of the North Netherworld continent? The King of Death Soul was very confused and wanted to figure it out. As for Yi Xing's ability to destroy his body, he was not afraid. After all, he was not a human warrior, but a dead soul. As long as his soul was not destroyed, he could continue to possess other people's bodies. As a 7-star King of Death Soul, his soul was very powerful. On the Star Continent, except for Wei Qingxuan's Light of Reincarnation, he did not care about any other warrior's attack. Whoosh! The black flame arrow suddenly shot out of the bow toward the King of Death Soul. Although he did not use astrology, this arrow contained arrow intent, 3 kinds of true meaning of Tao, and the embryonic form of arrow Tao, which was enough to threaten a 5-star king. Meng Yuanlai, who was possessed by the King of Death Soul, was only a 1-star king. In front of Yi Xing's arrow, he could not resist at all. In the blink of an eye, the arrow pierced through the King of Death Soul's head, killing him instantly. As Yi Xing shot the arrow, he said, You won't understand even if I explain it to you. Why bother asking? You only need to know that I destroyed your body yesterday, and I'm here to kill you today. That's enough. The King of Death Soul experienced the pain of the death of his body again. Although he had only possessed this body for a day and the pain was not as great as the pain of Zhuo Yupeng's death yesterday, the pain of death was not pleasant. The King of Death Soul's soul rushed out of Meng Yuanlia's body and turned into a black skull, letting out a shrill howl. Yi Xing! The Lord of Death Spirit roared angrily. So what if you destroyed my body? What can you do to this king's soul? Since you destroyed one of my bodies, I'll take over another one. Let's see how many you can kill. Yi Xing looked at the soul of the King of Death Spirit with cold light in his eyes and said, Who says I can't do anything to your soul? You've caused enough trouble in the Star Continent. Today is the day you die. Yi Xing's tone made the Lord of Death Spirit tremble. If someone had said that they could kill him yesterday, the King of Death Spirit would never have believed it and would have only snorted at it. However, he had suffered a great loss at the hands of Wei Qingxian yesterday, and he still had lingering fears. Now, Yi Xing's tone made him feel threatened and instinctively fearful. His rationality told him that he should run away immediately. Otherwise, he might really fall in this beautiful world of living beings. Whoosh! The King of Death Spirit immediately turned into a black light and rushed toward the Sea of Dark Prison. The Sea of Dark Prison was a forbidden area for human kings. The King of Death Spirit was just a soul, so he was not affected by the chaotic space of the Sea of Dark Prison. Therefore, as long as he escaped into the Sea of Dark Prison, he would be safe. You can't escape! Yi Xing shouted coldly, and the blue cloud wings appeared on his back instantly. Yi Xing had finished speaking in a flash. But as soon as he finished speaking, he had already flown more than 100 miles in the sky, blocking the King of Death Spirit and the Sea of Dark Prison. The King of Death Spirit was shocked. Yi Xing's cultivation had been exposed. He was only a 1-star king, but he could move so fast. The King of Death Spirit wanted to change his direction, but he had no time to react. In the blink of an eye, the King of Death Spirit had rushed to Yi Xing. At this moment, the King of Death Spirit was only dozens of miles away from the Sea of Dark Prison. He only needed one breath's time to rush into the Sea of Dark prison. Since he had already rushed to Yixing, and it was too late to change his direction, the King of Death Spirit made up his mind. Instead of slowing down, he increased his speed and rushed over directly. Anyway, he was just a soul now. Even if Yixing and Wei Qingxian could injure him, it was impossible for them to kill him in one breath's time. Facing the King of Death Spirit, Yixing stretched out his hand, and the starfire seed instantly appeared in his palm. It was only the size of a fist. The color of the flame was extremely pale, which was very different from normal flames. However, the temperature it contained was not something normal flames could compare with. In a flash, Yixing's palm hit the King of Death Spirit, and the starfire seed and the King of Death Spirit's soul came into contact. Although the starfire seed was only the size of a fist, its power was too terrifying. It was the only power that Yixing had that could injure a high-level king. The King of Death Spirit's soul did not pass through Yixing's body. Instead, he instantly howled miserably. His empty soul was blocked by the starfire seed. Fire seed? You have a level 5 fire seed? The King of Death Spirit screamed after howling, and his voice was full of fear. After saying this, the King of Death Spirit began to howl miserably again. When the starfire seed touched the King of Death Spirit, the flame spread directly on his soul, and in the blink of an eye, the whole skull was engulfed. Ah! The King of Death Spirit screamed miserably. His mouth was open, and his whole body was twisting. It could be seen how painful he was at this moment. Yesterday, the King of Death Spirit was attacked by Wei Qingxuan's light of reincarnation. Although he also howled miserably, he was still able to control his body and escape immediately. But now, the King of Death Spirit could only howl miserably and struggle. The severe pain made him unable to control his body to move. This was a dying struggle. In just one breath, the flame burned from the outside to the inside of the skull. The eyes, nostrils, and mouth of the skull were all emitting pale flames. The King of Death Spirit screamed even more miserably. The degree of the skull's distortion became smaller and smaller, and the empty body gradually collapsed and was destroyed. He was on the verge of death. Before the King of Death Spirit died, he used the last of his strength to shout, "Yixing! What's the use of killing me? The space crack in the depths of the Sea of Dark prison is getting bigger and bigger. In a few years, it will expand to the extent that a level 5 King of Death Spirit can pass through. You can kill me now, but at that time, thousands of Kings of Death Spirit will come to the Star Continent. How many of them can you kill? At that time, there will be Kings of Death Spirit who are as powerful as me. They will not only be souls, but also real 7-star Kings of Death Spirit. Ha ha ha. All the humans on the Star Continent will die. Yixing, you are no exception. You will be sucked dry by the King of Death Spirit, and you will die without a whole body. Ha ha ha. You will die without a whole body. Chapter 832. At the moment of death, the King of Death in soul went completely crazy. He no longer screamed, but laughed and shouted crazily. He didn't calm down until he was burned to ashes by the starfire seed. There was nothing in front of him. Even his soul had been burned to ashes. Naturally, nothing was left. The starfire seed returned to Yixing's palm. Yixing looked at the starfire seed with surprise in his eyes. Although he was sure that the starfire seed could hurt the soul, he didn't expect it to be so effective. It was simply the nemesis of the soul. Everything was divided into yin and yang, and the world was divided into life and death. The world of life was the yang world, and the world of death was the yin world. As a creature of the yin world, the dead spirit had extremely strong yin qi. Compared with the body, the soul was the yin of the yin. Only the extreme yang could restrain it. If it were an ordinary flame, the damage to the soul would be normal. However, the starfire seed was the essence of the flame, the yang of the yang. Naturally, it could restrain the soul of the King of Death in soul. Flames and thunderbolts both had strong yang qi and less yin qi. The starfire seed in flames could restrain the soul, so could the thunder essence in thunderbolts. Except for the starfire seed and the thunder essence, there were very few attacks that could cause great damage to the soul. Even the reincarnation light created by the reincarnation sovereign, which contained many kinds of power and could destroy the soul, was less effective than the starfire seed and the thunder essence. Therefore, Wei Qingxian could only hurt the soul of the King of Death in soul with the reincarnation light, but Yi Xing could easily kill him with the starfire seed. After killing the King of Death in Seoul, Yi Xing didn't look happy. Instead, he looked a little serious. Although the King of Death in Seoul's roar was crazy, it was not necessarily false. At the thought of thousands of Kings of Death in Seoul invading the Star Continent, Yi Xing's scalp tingled. 100,000 years ago, the Star Continent was invaded by the King of Death in Seoul. All the human beings on the Star Continent were slaughtered, and there were only a few left. The whole Star Continent became a paradise for the dead spirits. In the end, a true god powerhouse descended and exterminated the dead spirits of the Star Continent. Only after an extremely long period of time did the human race recover their vitality and develop once again. That was a tragic event in human history. As long as I, Yi Xing, am here, I can't let the undead occupy the Star Continent. I must find a way to stop it. Yi Xing thought to himself as he clenched his fists. The Star Continent was his starting point in the world of martial arts. In the first few years, he had always regarded his hometown as Earth. Now, if someone asked him where his hometown was, he would say it was the Star Continent. His friends, the important people in his life, were all here. With his strength, he could easily travel to the Starry Crescent Land through the passage between the Starry Crescent Land, but the others could not. To travel from the Star Continent to the Starry Crescent Continent, one would need to be at least a 4-star King Realm warrior. Other than him, only Wei Qingxian and the Black Tiger King had such strength. If Yi Xing left, the Dark Star Society and the Falling Star Sect would definitely be breached by the dead spirits. Everyone he knew would become food for the dead spirits. Therefore, Yi Xing would not leave just like that. He had to stay and solve the problem. If it was just an ordinary undead spirit king, it would not be a problem. With my strength and Qingxuan's help, killing a 6-star undead spirit king would not be a problem. However, there will be a 7-star undead spirit king, which is equivalent to a high-level King Realm warrior. Yi Xing thought. Although the Starfire Seed had the power to kill a high-level King Realm warrior, Yi Xing did not think that he would be a match for a high-level King Realm warrior. A 7-star undead spirit king was even more terrifying than a 7-star King Realm warrior. This was because the bodies of undead spirits were different from martial artists. Their bodies were extremely sturdy, and they did not have flesh. They did not know pain. Only by destroying or digging out the corpse jade at the heart could one kill them. A undead spirit king was even harder to kill than a normal undead creature. This was because a normal undead creature's spirit would be destroyed as soon as its body died. However, a undead spirit king's spirit was extremely powerful, and it had already formed a soul body. Even if its body died, its spirit could still be possessed. This alone was a disaster for martial artists. To deal with a 7-star undead spirit king, I have to raise my cultivation to a higher realm. Yi Xing thought, and then he thought of the Fallen Star Secret Realm. He had already become a King Realm warrior, and could go to the Fallen Star Secret Realm to complete the King Realm trial. At that time, he would be able to obtain the entire Star Palace, and all the treasures inside would belong to him. There are many treasures in the Fallen Star Secret Realm, and they might be able to help me become a 2-star King Realm warrior quickly. However, before going there, I have to destroy the Great Yuan dynasty first. Since he was not in the Star Continent, Yi Xing could temporarily put aside all the grudges in the Star Continent. However, after returning to the Star Continent, the grudges of the past were still vivid in his mind. As long as Meng Tai was not dead, Yi Xing's mind would not be at ease. He had to get rid of Meng Tai as soon as possible so that he could cultivate in peace. With Yi Xing's current strength, it was more than enough to destroy the Great Yuan dynasty. Tianjing City, the capital of the Great Yuan dynasty. The teleportation palace in Tianjing City was connected to all the major forces in the Star Continent. One of the teleportation arrays shone brightly, and Yi Xing walked out from it. This was Yi Xing's first time in Tianjing City. When Yi Xing walked out of the teleportation array, a 6-star venerate walked over and asked, "Who are you? Why have you come to Tianjing City?" Tianjing City was the capital of the Great Yuan dynasty, the center of the dynasty. Naturally, it was very strict about checking the identities of cultivators. Naturally, Yi Xing did not need to fabricate another identity, nor did he need to hide his purpose. With his strength, he wanted to enter the palace openly and kill Meng Tai. Yi Xing said, "I am Yi Xing from the Dark Star Church. I have come to Tianjing City to destroy the great Yuan dynasty and kill Meng Tai. Yi Xing's words were spoken openly, without any intention of hiding anything. Not only did the six-star venerate in front of him hear it, but the nearby cultivators also heard it. Destroy the great Yuan dynasty and kill Meng Tai. These words were like a sudden clap of thunder in the ears of all the cultivators. This was the capital of the great Yuan dynasty, Tianjing City. Unexpectedly, someone dared to say such disgraceful words. Everyone who heard it was horrified. Shua. The cultivators around Yi Xing hurriedly distanced themselves from Yi Xing as if they were avoiding a ghost. The six-star venerate in front of Yi Xing was shocked and furious. He shouted, "Guards, traitor of the Dark Star Church!" As he spoke, he stretched out his palm, and a huge astral hand reached out to grab Yi Xing. Scram! Yi Xing snorted and waved his hand. A surge of vigorous energy instantly dispersed the astral palm like an avalanche. At the same time, the six-star venerate flew backward. He had already said that he was here to destroy the great Yuan dynasty and kill Meng Tai. This six-star venerate actually dared to attack him. He was extremely stupid. Where is the traitor of the Dark Star Church? How dare you come to Tianjing City? You are courting death. There were many cultivators guarding the teleportation hall. When they heard the six-star venerates shout, they all rushed over. Among them, most of them were beginner and intermediate venerates. There was also a small portion of them who were advanced astral realm venerates. However, when they arrived, Yi Xing had already disappeared. Chapter 833. Flying was forbidden in Tianjing City. Only those with a flight order could fly in the sky above Tianjing City. At this moment, Yi Xing was walking in the air, heading towards the inner palace. Tianjing City was extremely large, with a radius of 10,000 miles. Only the inner palace was where the Meng royal family lived, and it was also the core of the dynasty. Martial artists were still able to freely enter and exit Tianjing City. However, entering the inner city was much stricter. Even Yi Xing couldn't directly enter. This was because the entire inner city was constantly protected by a powerful array formation. The Great Yuan dynasty had been established for 10,000 years. In these 10,000 years, countless level 5 formation masters had set up formations in the inner palace. There were many members of the Meng royal family, and the inner city was not small, with a radius of 3,000 miles. Within this 3,000 miles, there were countless formations. For a king, every step was a formation. The martial artists guarding the teleportation hall did not stop Yi Xing, so they naturally reported the news. After many rounds of reports, the news quickly reached Meng Tai. Imperial Palace Main Hall. The Supreme King, Meng Tai, sat high on the throne. In the hall below, many people were gathered. They were all heroes of the current era. Meng Tai led the Great Yuan dynasty into the army of kings and sovereigns to attack Darkstar Island, but in the end, they fled pathetically and returned in defeat. After returning to the capital, after a short rest, they naturally gathered the experts to discuss how to deal with the Dark Star sect. The experts believed that the Great Yuan dynasty should use their advantage, relying on the formations that Tianjing City had accumulated for 10,000 years, and the dynasty's dragon luck, to defend with all their might. However, this way, the Great Yuan dynasty's power would be limited to Tianjing City, and they would not be able to control the Star Continent. The Dark Star sect would definitely rise and take in all the other factions. Meng Tai was not very willing to defend. As a 4-star king, one of the few powerful kings in the Great Yuan dynasty, Meng Tai did not want to see the Great Yuan dynasty lose control of the Star Continent. However, the Dark Star sect had produced Wei Qingxian, whose strength was heaven-defying. Even if he used the dynasty's dragon luck, it would be difficult for him to be a match for Wei Qingxian outside of Tianjing City. Other than defending, there seemed to be no other way. When Meng Tai was caught between a rock and a hard place, he received news that Yi Xing had come to destroy De Yuan and kill Meng Tai. He was angry because of the content of the news, but he was shocked because the person who came was actually Yi Xing? How could it be Yi Xing? Meng Tai was too shocked. Although he wasn't able to kill Yi Xing in the Azure Cloud Mountain range 2 years ago, he had personally seen Yi Xing shatter space and leave. From then on, there was no news about Yi Xing in the Star Continent. As the Supreme King of the Great Yuan dynasty, The ancestors of the Meng clan had once used a spatial passageway to head to other continents. Meng Tai naturally knew that other than the Starry Sky continent, there were other Starry Sky continents. Therefore, Meng Tai could vaguely guess that Yi Xing must have left this space and the Star continent. In history, there weren't many people who had left the Star continent. They were all peak 4-star kings. After they left the Star continent, there was no news about them anymore. No one knew if they were alive or dead. None of them had returned to the Star continent. Meng Tai believed that Yi Xing wouldn't return to the Star continent. If he didn't return, he would have nothing to do with the Star continent. It was no different from death. Therefore, it wasn't unreasonable for Meng Tai to tell others that Yi Xing was dead. Now that he received news that Yi Xing had returned to the Star continent and had even come to Tianjing City, saying that he wanted to destroy De Yuan and kill Meng Tai, how could Meng Tai not be shocked and furious? Your Majesty, Yi Xing, he's still alive. This traitor actually didn't die and even dared to come to Tianjing City. This is really treacherous. Below, some of the experts had also received the news. Instantly, it was as if a nest had exploded. Meng Tai stood up from the throne. His eyes were fierce as he shouted, "This traitor! He was lucky to escape last time. Today, he actually dares to come to Tianjing City. He's like a sheep in a tiger's den, seeking his own death. Everyone, follow me and kill this traitor." He's seeking his own death. Kill this traitor. Due to the defeat at Dark Star Island, the experts in the hall were all furious. Now that someone had come to Tianjing City, it was their home ground. Victory was within their grasp, and they were all very excited. However, there was one person who had a worried look on his face. Although this person wasn't a king, he had a status that wasn't inferior to a king in the Yuan dynasty. He was the imperial tutor Si Kongyan. When Yi Xing had first arrived at the Star continent, it was Si Kongyan who had observed the night sky and determined that he would be the demon star in troubled times. According to Si Kongyan's divination, the demon star in troubled times had the possibility of destroying the foundation of the Yuan dynasty in 10 years. Calculating the time, it was already the 9th year since the descent of the demon star. Si Kongyan had a very ominous premonition in his heart. If the Yuan dynasty is really about to collapse, what can we do now? It's useless to inform His Majesty. It's better to act according to the circumstances and pray for the best. Si Kongyan thought to himself as he suppressed the thought of reporting to the Supreme King, Meng Tai. At this moment, Meng Tai was still angry because of the defeat at Dark Star Island. Yi Xing had even killed the crown prince, Meng Yuanshang, and was a thorn in Meng Tai's flesh. Now that Yi Xing had come, if Si Kongyan said, "Your Majesty, the Yuan dynasty is destined to be destroyed by Yi Xing today. Don't resist anymore and run for your life," Meng Tai would probably beat Si Kongyan to death in a fit of anger. Yi Xing's flying speed was extremely fast. By the time Meng Tai received the news, he had already arrived outside the palace. Along the way, some of the guards wanted to intercept Yi Xing. However, these guards were all astral-reaching realm venerables. How could they compare to Yi Xing's speed? Naturally, they could only watch and sigh. It was only when Yi Xing stopped in the sky above the palace that a group of inner-city guards rushed out from the city and blocked his path. Tianjing City was the core of the dynasty. The guards were naturally the most elite troops, and the soldiers were all astral-reaching realm venerables. The inner-city guards were the elites of the elites. The weakest of them was a mid-level venerable. The middle-level generals were all venerable lords, and the high-level generals were all king realm existences. At this moment, there was a high-level general in the group blocking Yi Xing. He was a 1-star king realm expert. The inner-city general, Meng Shi, had been guarding the palace all this time. Naturally, he didn't recognize Yi Xing. At this moment, he also didn't receive any orders to invade. He just happened to be patrolling nearby. Seeing someone rushing towards the inner city, he came out to intercept. Meng Shi's eyes were like sharp blades. He unsheathed the treasured blade in his hand and stared at Yi Xing as he shouted, "Where did this madman come from? You dare to run amok in the sky above Tianjing City? Are you tired of living?" Scram! Meng Shi was also a 1-star king. However, in Yi Xing's eyes, he was too weak to even stand up to a gust of wind. Pang! Before Meng Shi could react, he was sent flying several thousand meters away by Yi Xing's slap. Only then did Meng Shi's communication pearl light up. He had received the news of Yi Xing's invasion. Chapter 834. Apart from Meng Shi, the other warriors blocking Yi Xing's path were all astral-reaching realm sovereigns. Seeing Yi Xing send Meng Shi flying with a single slap, the sovereigns' hearts shook. Their faces were filled with shock and fear. However, as the damning dynasty's inner palace guards, their duty forbade them from retreating. Although they were terrified and their legs were shaking, they still gritted their teeth and stood in front of Yi Xing facing these ignorant soldiers. Yi Xing took out his crimson flame bow without hesitation and drew it into a full moon. A black flame arrow rapidly condensed. Whoosh! Yi Xing's aura erupted. The arrow intent contained an extremely penetrating power. At this moment, Yi Xing's aura was so powerful that it was not inferior to a 5-star king's. Once the arrow was shot, anyone below the 5-star king's level would be killed in one shot. The sovereigns in front of him only felt this extremely penetrating aura. They already felt that their bodies were about to be penetrated, and they were about to die. In front of this kind of aura, they forgot all their duties. There was only the fear of death. So. The sovereigns hurriedly fled to the sides. They were clear that if they were half a step slower, they would definitely die under this arrow's attack. Just as the sovereigns fled to the sides, the black flame arrow's power had accumulated to the limit. Yi Xing released the bowstring. Whoosh! The black flame arrow shot out like a black light streaking across the sky. In the blink of an eye, it shot into the formation ahead. Boom 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 boom. Ordinary grade 5 formations could only block low-step kings. Yi Xing's arrow had the power of a 5-star king. Naturally, it was like a hot knife through butter. In the blink of an eye, it forcibly broke through more than 10 layers of formations and shot out over 100 li. More than 10 grade 5 formations were forcibly broken in the blink of an eye. The commotion caused was so great that the entire Tianjing city was shaking. The explosion of formations being destroyed was even more shocking than the thunder in the sky. Although Yi Xing had said, "Destroy Diyuan, kill Meng Tai" in the teleportation hall, only a few people beside him had heard it. The other martialists in Tianjing City didn't know that someone was attacking Tianjing City. Therefore, the sudden tremors and explosions caused all the martial artists in Tianjing City to be shocked as they looked at each other. Meng Tai and the other kings had just left the main hall of the palace when they felt the tremors and heard a series of explosions. They were all shocked. The Imperial Palace's inner city's formations were all level 5 formations, and even a 3-star king would have a hard time breaking through one of them. However, from the sound just now, it seemed that more than 10 formations had been blasted apart in the blink of an eye. What kind of power was this? According to the news, Yi Xing had come alone. At this moment, Meng Tai and the other king tiers were doubting the authenticity of the news. 2 years ago, Yi Xing had only been a 7-star exalt before he went missing. In just 2 years, had Yi Xing already possessed such terrifying strength? None of the kings believed him. "Let's go!" Meng Tai shouted loudly. He took the lead and flew towards Yi Xing's direction at an extremely fast speed. Although a king's eyesight was shocking, if they didn't cultivate eye techniques, they could only see a few hundred miles away. Although they could see if there was someone more than 1,000 miles away, they could only see a small black shadow in the distance. They couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, let alone their appearance. Meng Tai flew at full speed, dozens of miles away in a breath. After flying for about 200 miles, Yi Xing had already drawn the crimson flame bow and condensed a second black flame arrow. Whoosh! Moreover, Yi Xing used his astrology, and a ray of starlight shot into the sky, turning into a flaming star. On the flaming star, the image of a huge flaming divine bird flapped its wings and was about to fly. Saint-level astrology. Vermilion bird astrology. Surging flaming star power fell, causing the power of Yi Xing's arrow to increase rapidly. If the power of the first arrow was comparable to that of a 5-star king, then the power of this arrow was unrivaled among 5-star kings. It was almost comparable to that of a 6-star king. Boom, 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 boom. This arrow destroyed even more formations, increasing the number by almost half. In the blink of an eye, a total of 16 formations were destroyed. Yi Xing moved forward 100 miles in a single step, and drew the crimson flame bow again, condensing a third black flame arrow. By the time Meng Tai saw Yi Xing's figure clearly, Yi Xing had already shot several arrows in succession. Close to 100 level 5 formations were forcefully destroyed by Yi Xing's tyrannical strength. Yi Xing had advanced several hundred miles from the edge of the Imperial Palace's inner city to the Imperial Palace's main hall. Although Meng Tai had received news that Yi Xing had attacked Tianjing City, he didn't see Yi Xing's face clearly. He also didn't dare to believe that the figure who destroyed the level 5 formation so easily was Yi Xing. 2 years ago, Yi Xing was only a 7-star supremacy. He had escaped from Meng Tai's clutches, and his whereabouts were unknown. In just 2 years, Yi Xing's strength had actually grown to such a level. This was truly unbelievable and deeply shocking to Meng Tai. The moment he saw Yi Xing's face clearly, Meng Tai once again recalled Si Kongyan's words about the demon star in troubled times. A trace of fear actually rose in his heart. This time, the great Yuan dynasty seemed to be in real danger. No! Impossible! The great Yuan dynasty definitely can't be defeated by my hands. Meng Tai shouted in his heart. In an instant, he expelled the evil thoughts from his mind. At this moment, Meng Tai's willpower was as firm as steel. He definitely didn't believe in the demon star in troubled times. His eyes were filled with madness as he looked at Yi Xing with killing intent. Today, he definitely had to kill Yi Xing and let his soul end here. However, Meng Tai didn't realize that if he really didn't believe that Yi Xing was the demon star in troubled times, why would he have such a huge reaction that was close to madness? Yi Xing had long seen Meng Tai's figure. When Meng Tai stopped a few hundred miles ahead, Yi Xing laughed loudly. Old man Meng Tai, today, I'll return all the enmity of the past. I'm here to take your dog life. Meng Tai was as furious as a mad lion. His hair and beard stood on end, and a terrifying aura erupted from him. He shouted, "You traitor, 2 years ago you were lucky enough to escape. Instead of being a stray dog outside, you buried your head in life and tried your best to survive. How dare you kill your way into Tianjing? You're courting death." Yi Xing laughed loudly and said, "Tianjing City is nothing to me. I can come and go as I wish. Taking your dog life is as easy as flipping my hand." As he spoke, Yi Xing shot out another arrow. The black flame arrow was like a ray of light that pierced through the sky. It shot forward explosively and instantly covered 100 miles. It was unstoppable. Rank 5 formations were destroyed one after another. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 formations were destroyed. Yi Xing took a step forward and advanced another 100 miles, closing the distance between him and Meng Tai. This time, Meng Tai saw everything clearly. The might of Yi Xing's arrow made his heart tremble instinctively. Even though he was a 4-star king and had the strength of a peak 4-star king, he couldn't contend against the might of Yi Xing's arrow. The more frightened Meng Tai was, the more intense his killing intent became. He roared, "Control the formations and kill this traitor. Tear him into pieces and let him die without a burial place." Chapter 835. There was a huge difference between someone controlling a formation and someone not controlling it. If an ordinary level 5 formation was not controlled, even a 3-star king would be able to break it after attacking for a long time. However, if someone was controlling it, the formation's power could be unleashed to the maximum, and it could even contend with 4-star kings. This was especially true for formations that worked with martial artists. The stronger the martial artist, the stronger the formation's power would be. It could allow a low-level king to kill a 4-star king. In fact, if there were enough kings controlling the formation and they were strong enough, they could even contend with 5-star kings. However, an ordinary level 5 formation was just an ordinary one. No matter what, it could not be compared to a level 5 formation at the initial stage. Therefore, no matter how many kings were controlling the formation, they could only unleash the power of a level 5 formation to the level of a 5-star king. It could not be compared to a 6-star king. As for a level 5 formation at the initial stage, as long as someone was controlling it, it would not be difficult to kill a 6-star king. There were many kings in the great Yuan dynasty. At Meng Tai's command, dozens of kings behind him entered a formation. It was a formation that worked with martial artists' attacks. Dozens of low-level kings working with this formation could unleash power that could barely be compared to a 5-star king. It didn't take long for Yi Xing to slaughter his way to the front of the formation like crushing dry weeds. The arrow just now had only destroyed 9 formations. When it reached the formation, It was destroyed by a ray of sword light. When Meng Tai saw this, he was overjoyed. When he saw Yi Xing rushing over, he shouted, "Use the sword light to kill this bastard." The kings circulated their astral energies to the limit and injected them into the formation. A ray of sword light that was 1,000 feet long formed. Whoosh! Under the control of a level 5 formation master, this 1,000 feet long ray of sword light flew 100 miles in an instant. It had the power to split open the heavens and break the earth as it shot toward Yi Xing. Yi Xing snorted. The black flame arrow that had been formed a long time ago instantly shot out toward the sword light. Bang! The black flame arrow collided with the 1,000 feet long sword light, and a loud explosion sounded. The 1,000 feet long sword light shattered like a mirror, and splashed in all directions. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yi Xing had used the vermilion bird star form and shot out an arrow with his full power. Even a peak 5-star king would find it hard to resist, and its power was close to that of a 6-star king. How could that 100-meter-long sword light, which was only equivalent to an ordinary 5-star king's attack, be able to resist it? The black flame arrow shattered the 1,000-foot-long sword light, but its power was still terrifying. Like a hot knife through butter, it instantly arrived in front of the array controlled by the kings. Boom! The black flame arrow hit the protective light shield outside the formation with a loud explosion. Cracks immediately began to appear on the invisible protective barrier. Meng Tai's expression instantly changed. The other kings were also shocked. The power of Yi Xing's arrow was even more terrifying than they had expected. The terrifying rebounding force was transmitted to the kings through the array, causing their bodies to shake. The weaker 1-star kings couldn't withstand the rebounding force, and they all spat out blood. The array was on the verge of collapse. A bunch of useless chickens and pottery dogs dare to block my path? Take another arrow. Yi Xing yelled loudly. Another black flame arrow condensed on the crimson flame bow and shot out. Among the kings, the 1-star kings all spat out blood and were severely injured. Even the 2-star kings were affected by the rebounding force, and the 3-star kings were also affected. The power they injected into the array was greatly reduced. The sword light that was shot out was only a few hundred feet long. Compared to the 1,000 feet long sword light before, it was only half the size, and its power was also reduced by more than half. It had already fallen to the level of a 4-star king. Even the 1,000 feet long sword light couldn't block the black flame arrow, let alone this sword light that was greatly reduced in power. Boom! The sword light was instantly shattered. The black flame arrow's momentum was unstoppable, and it instantly shot into the array's protective barrier. With a loud explosion, the protective barrier was completely shattered. All the kings spat out blood. They were all severely injured, and their bodies were sent flying. Even the 3-star kings were no exception. Although Meng Tai was furious, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His expression was grim as he hurriedly retreated. Old man Meng Tai, even your imperial city's array couldn't withstand a single blow. Where can you escape to? Yi Xing yelled loudly. He chased after Meng Tai and shot out another arrow, destroying the array in front of him one after another. Meng Tai's face was grim. After 10,000 years of hard work from generation after generation of rank 5 array masters, Tianjing Imperial City had set up too many arrays. These were the foundation of the Great Yuan dynasty. However, Yi Xing wasn't lying. These arrays, these foundations, they couldn't withstand a single blow from Yi Xing. They couldn't stop Yi Xing's footsteps. Now, Meng Tai could only rely on the Great Yuan dynasty's dragon luck that had been accumulated for 10,000 years. Although Yi Xing's speed was much faster than Meng Tai's, Yi Xing advanced by breaking through arrays, while Meng Tai directly passed through them. Therefore, Meng Tai was naturally faster. The Luck Gathering Altar was located in the square in front of the Imperial Palace. Meng Tai flew a few hundred miles at his fastest speed and returned to the Dragon Gathering Altar. Yi Xing was behind him, breaking through arrays and chasing after him at extreme speed. Only after landing on the Luck Gathering Altar did Meng Tai feel at ease. On the Luck Gathering Altar, Meng Tai could control the Great Yuan dynasty's dragon luck as he wished. He could attack and defend, and he could unleash its full power, exploding with the strength of a rank 5 king. In the past, no one had been like Yi Xing, killing his way into the capital before the old dynasty's dragon luck had dissipated. Even if a new expert was stronger than the old dynasty's supreme king, He couldn't do anything about the dragon luck that had been accumulated for a long time. He could only take advantage of the fact that the old dynasty's forces were holed up in the capital to reclaim the world's forces and build a new dynasty with a new luck-gathering altar. In this way, the new dynasty would become the Orthodox dynasty and be able to gather the star continent's dragon luck, while the old dynasty's dragon luck would lose its source and gradually dissipate. A dynasty's dragon luck was difficult to gather and dissipate. In 100 years, the old dynasty's dragon luck would dissipate. At that time, the new dynasty's dragon luck would be able to invade the old dynasty's capital and wipe out the remaining forces. Within 100 years, if the old dynasty's royal family could produce an expert that could sweep the world, they could still save the dynasty's fate. If not, it would naturally be difficult to escape destruction after 100 years. If Yixing hadn't killed his way into Tianjing City, the Dark Star sect would have had to use a method that would take 100 years to completely destroy the Great Yuan dynasty. But now, Yixing was destroying everything in his path. With his absolute strength, he was going to end the life of a prosperous dynasty in one fell swoop. Under Meng Tai's control, the dragon luck in the luck-gathering altar exploded, turning into a green dragon that was a few hundred feet long. It coiled on the plaza and surrounded the altar. Meng Tai felt the dragon luck's power and felt extremely at ease. He laughed and said, "Traitor, you must have experienced many heaven-defying things to have your current strength. However, with the dragon luck that my great Yuan has accumulated for 10,000 years, haha. What can you do to me?" Chapter 836. Following Meng Tai's loud laughter, the 10,000 feet long azure dragon coiled around him raised its head high and opened its mouth to roar. The dragon's roar shook heaven and earth, and a terrifying dragon's might spread in all directions as if it had materialized. A burst of invisible power descended from the sky, and Yixing, who was over 50 kilometers away, was also forced down from the sky. If it were an ordinary king, they would probably be pressed to the ground by this dragon aura, unable to move at all. However, although Yixing had landed on the ground, the aura on his body was still very strong, especially the penetrative power of the arrow will, which had pierced through the formless pressure. Other than the fact that it was difficult for him to fly, Yixing was safe and sound. Yixing drew his bow again and shot out an arrow. The formations in front of him were all destroyed, and in the blink of an eye, there were no more obstacles between Yixing and the luck-gathering altar. Looking at Meng Tai, who was laughing loudly on the luck-gathering altar as if everything was under his control, Yixing also laughed. Meng Tai was furious and roared, "You're about to die and you still dare to laugh?" Yixing laughed and said, "I should be the one saying that to you. You want to stop me, Yixing, with just the draconic providence of a low-grade dynasty? Old man Meng Tai, if this is your greatest support, then you can die now." Meng Tai's expression changed. The Great Yuan dynasty's draconic providence was indeed his greatest support. As long as the draconic providence didn't disperse, unless a 6-star king attacked, no one would be able to resist the draconic providence. Even a peak 5-star king wouldn't be able to resist it. This was because there was a limit to a person's strength, but the draconic providence was endless. The Great Yuan dynasty's draconic providence was only at the peak of 5-star kings, but it could kill peak 5-star kings. If Yixing could destroy the Great Yuan dynasty's draconic providence, Meng Tai would no longer have the strength to resist Yixing, and he would definitely die. Therefore, he was shocked when he heard this. However, when he thought of the strength of the dynasty's draconic providence, the fear in Meng Tai's heart disappeared. Yixing's strength was indeed strong, but Meng Tai didn't believe that it could reach the level of a 6-star king. Meng Tai said coldly, "Just the draconic providence of a low-rank dynasty? Humph. You're just a frog in a well who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How can you understand the great power of the dynasty's dragon fate? The one who will die today is you." As soon as he finished speaking, Meng Tai controlled the 1,000-feet-long azure dragon and charged towards Yixing, who just as the azure dragon moved, a terrifying gust of wind blew towards Yixing. In the blink of an eye, the azure dragon stretched out its claw. A huge dragon claw the size of a small mountain tore through the void and reached for Yixing's head. Yixing's arrow intent was attached to his body. His figure moved and instantly changed positions. The azure dragon's claw missed and tore a hole with a diameter of 100 meters in the ground. "Your attack power is barely passable, but your speed is too slow. Why don't you try taking one of my arrows?" Yi Xing's voice rang out from over 100 miles away. While speaking, Yi Xing's third eye opened on his forehead as he used the Voidbreaker God Eye. At the same time, a ray of starlight shot into the sky and turned into a huge starlight bow and arrow. It was the Sagittarius constellation. The Voidbreaker God Eye's power could pierce through the void and nothing could block it. The luck-gathering altar, the 1,000-feet-long azure dragon, Meng Tai's body, and the circulation of the astral energy. Everything could be seen at a glance under the Voidbreaker God Eye. Yi Xing could see where the attack power was weak and where the defense was weak at a glance. He pulled the crimson flame bow and a black flame arrow quickly formed. The Sagittarius constellation's surging astral energy poured down, and the piercing aura increased by more than 10 times. At this moment, Yi Xing was more than 200 miles away from the luck-gathering altar. Meng Tai could control the power of Draconic Providence to attack from 100 miles away, but it would be difficult to attack from 200 miles away. The speed would be much slower, and he wouldn't be able to stop Yi Xing from forming the astral energy arrow. Moreover, as soon as the black flame arrow formed, the aura it gave off made Meng Tai's heart tremble. Looking at the Sagittarius constellation in the sky, Meng Tai once again thought of Si Qian's prophecy. He had the thought that the Dayuan dynasty would be destroyed and his life would be over. As a 4-star king and one of the strongest kings since the establishment of the Dayuan dynasty, Meng Tai really couldn't imagine that the Dayuan dynasty would be destroyed by his own hands. Meng Tai's mind only relaxed for an instant before he steadied himself and recalled the dynasty's draconic providence. The 1,000-feet-long azure dragon instantly flew back and surrounded the luck-gathering altar, forming an impenetrable defense. Under full defense, even if Yi Xing's arrow had the power of a 6-star king, it wouldn't be easy for it to break through the draconic providence. In Meng Tai's opinion, Yi Xing might be able to unleash the power of a 6-star king for an instant, but he definitely wouldn't be able to maintain it for long. Therefore, as long as he could block this arrow, there might still be hope for this battle. Unfortunately, he had only calculated the increase in power of the Sagittarius constellation relative to Yi Xing's, but he hadn't calculated that the third eye in the middle of Yi Xing's forehead wasn't an ordinary martial Dao heavenly eye, but a type of god eye that had already seen through everything. Old man Meng Tai, die! Yi Xing shouted. The black flame arrow instantly left the bowstring and shot out. This arrow contained the power of the 3 Dao intents of darkness, wind, and fire, as well as surging astral energy, the power of the Sagittarius constellation, and the Vermilion Bird constellation. The power it unleashed was definitely at the level of a 6-star king. Moreover, it wasn't something an ordinary 6-star king could compare to. Just the power of the arrow was already terrifying enough to break through the defense of the dynasty's draconic providence. However, the God Eye Voidbreaker had found the flaw, which made the arrow even more powerful. Whoosh! The black flame arrow was like a ray of light, drawing an arc in the void and hitting a certain part of the green dragon. This arrow easily shot into the green dragon's body. Moreover, the entire green dragon's body started to disintegrate, and the dynasty's draconic providence started to dissipate. Meng Tai's eyes were instantly filled with fear. At this moment, he was controlling the dynasty's draconic providence, so he could clearly feel every change in the dynasty's draconic providence. Meng Tai originally thought that with the dynasty's draconic providence, even if it suffered some losses, it would still be able to block Yi Xing's arrow. However, he never expected that Yi Xing's arrow would directly attack the foundation of the dynasty's draconic providence, causing the dynasty's draconic providence that the Dayuan dynasty had accumulated for tens of thousands of years to collapse like a tower that had lost its foundation. As a result, the dynasty's draconic providence had completely lost its power, and the black flame arrow easily pierced through the green dragon's body. Meng Tai was still in shock when the black flame arrow shot into his chest, instantly piercing through and leaving a bowl-sized hole. An intense pain spread from his chest to the rest of his body. Although the wound caused by the arrow was only the size of a bowl, the moment it pierced through Meng Tai's body, the power of the arrow had already invaded his body and attacked every part of his body. No dash! Meng Tai lowered his head to look at the hole in his chest and let out a shrill cry. He could feel the life in his body rapidly depleting, and death was getting closer and closer to him. In just 2 breaths' time, Meng Tai fell to the ground and died. The life in his body was completely destroyed. Chapter 837. The Supreme King Meng Tai had died and the dynasty's dragon luck had collapsed. The Great Yuan dynasty had been destroyed. Its 10,000 years of foundation had been destroyed overnight. Yixing had slaughtered his way from the inner city of the imperial palace to the altar. He had destroyed the formations and fought against the kings. His momentum had attracted the attention of countless martial artists. The inner city army of the Great Yuan dynasty and many warriors of the Meng royal family had witnessed the battle between Yixing and Meng Tai from afar. Seeing Meng Tai die, everyone was shocked and in disbelief. In the history of the Star Continent, the highest cultivation level had been a 4-star king and the highest strength had been a 5-star king. However, the dynasty's dragon luck of the Great Yuan dynasty was able to resist the top 5-star kings. It could be said that in the Star Continent, as long as the dragon luck of the Great Yuan dynasty was not destroyed, the Great Yuan dynasty should be impregnable. However, the dynasty's draconic fate had been dispersed. The utmost king, Meng Tai, had died. Furthermore, the person who had accomplished all of this was Yixing alone. This result was simply too unbelievable. Thus, the Meng royal clan's cultivators were all dumbstruck. They were simply terrified. The Great Yuan dynasty has been destroyed. Run for your lives. In the backyard of the palace's main hall, a loud shout was heard. It was Si Kongyan's shout. In front of Si Kongyan was a teleportation formation. After the shout, the teleportation formation emitted a pure white light and Si Kongyan disappeared. Yixing looked towards the direction of the voice. His gaze penetrated the palace's main hall and saw the pure white light in the teleportation formation. Yixing had destroyed the dynasty's dragon luck and killed Meng Tai. This had already frightened the inner city army of the palace. Hearing Si Kongyan's shout, the warriors no longer restrained themselves and fled in all directions. The Great Yuan dynasty had been destroyed and Meng Tai was dead. These warriors no longer had a target to protect and no reason to persevere. Who would dare to face Yixing? Of course, they fled as fast as they could. The Meng royal clan's cultivators soon recovered from their stupefied state. Meng Tai was indeed dead. He was deader than dead. Right now, the most important thing was for them to survive. They also joined in the escape. With regards to the Great Yuan dynasty, Yixing hated Meng Tai the most. Meng Tai was already dead and the Great Yuan dynasty had fallen apart. He was not a bloodthirsty person, and there was no need for him to start a massacre for no reason. Hence, he allowed the cultivators to escape. However, the Meng clan had ruled the Starry Continent for tens of thousands of years. It was unknown how many clans they had bullied and offended. In the past, as the ruler of the Great Yuan dynasty, no one dared to voice their anger. Now that the Great Yuan dynasty had been destroyed, the Meng clan had fallen from the throne. Their future days would probably not be easy. At the very least, the Great Yuan dynasty and the Dark Star sect had been fighting for more than 1,000 years. The Dark Star sect would not let go of the Meng family so easily. Yixing did not need to worry about these matters. The Great Yuan dynasty had ruled the Starry Continent for tens of thousands of years. They must have collected many treasures. Yixing had destroyed the Great Yuan dynasty. Naturally, he would not work for others. He had to take away the treasures collected by the Great Yuan dynasty. Yixing took Meng Tai's storage ring and activated his divine void-breaking eye. Very quickly, he searched through the entire inner palace. Most of the treasures in the Great Yuan dynasty were carried by Meng Tai. However, there were still some treasures hidden in the treasury. After Yixing found them, he took them all. Then, he used the teleportation array in Tianjing City to reach the East Divine Continent. By the time Yixing arrived at the Dark Star Island, the Dark Star sect had already received news from Tianjing City. The Dark Star sect naturally had spies in Tianjing City. Everyone in Tianjing City knew that such a huge matter had happened in the Great Yuan dynasty. Naturally, the news quickly reached the Dark Star Island. However, most of the martial artists only knew that the Supreme King Meng Tai had died and the Great Yuan dynasty had been destroyed. However, they did not know who had killed Meng Tai and who had destroyed the Great Yuan dynasty. This was the first news that the Dark Star sect received. Tianjing City had the imperial dragon fate of the Great Yuan dynasty. This was something that the Dark Star sect was extremely wary of. Although the Dark Star sect's strength had surpassed the Great Yuan dynasty, they did not attack Tianjing City. This was because they could not deal with the imperial dragon fate of the Great Yuan dynasty. Now, there was suddenly news that someone had broken into the inner palace, killed Meng Tai, and destroyed the Great Yuan dynasty. The upper echelons of the Dark Star sect felt like they were dreaming. They did not dare to believe that this was real. Who had the strength to kill Meng Tai? Who controlled the imperial dragon fate of the Great Yuan dynasty? When the Dark Star sect received the news, they immediately called for a meeting of the upper echelons. They carefully confirmed the news and confirmed that they had not read it wrongly. The source of the news was also correct. It was indeed from the spies of the Dark Star sect in Tianjing City. After a long period of shock, the Black Biao King decided to go to Tianjing City to investigate. Now, although Zhua Xinglong was the sect leader of the Dark Star sect in name, the Black Biao King was the true decision-maker of the Dark Star sect. This news was too shocking. The Black Biao King did not dare to believe it. He could only go to Tianjing City personally to investigate and see for himself. Zhua Xinglong said, "Could it be that the spies in Tianjing City were exposed and have already betrayed us and joined the Great Yuan dynasty? They set up an inescapable net in Tianjing City and then deliberately tricked us into going to Tianjing City, walking right into the trap?" The news was too shocking. Zhua Xinglong could not believe that Meng Tai had died just like that. The Great Yuan dynasty had been destroyed just like that. Hence, he started to think about other things. Many elders had the same concerns. The Black Biao King said, "The most terrifying thing about Tianjing City is the imperial dragon fate of the Great Yuan dynasty. As long as we do not attack the inner palace, Meng Tai will not be able to stop us. Lady Xianxia and I will go and investigate. We will definitely be able to come and go as we please. There's no need to go. The news is true." A pleasant voice came from outside the Dark Star Hall, following which, Wei Qingxian walked in. Her face was filled with excitement and joy. There was another person beside Wei Qingxian. The gazes of the kings of the Dark Star sect landed on this person. Their faces were filled with shock. It was as if they had seen a ghost. "Brother Yixing." The first to react was the Black Biao King. He rushed in front of Yixing and said excitedly, "You're still alive?" "As expected. You're still alive. Haha. You're still alive." His first sentence was filled with shock. Following which, it turned into great joy. The person who came in with Wei Qingxian was naturally Yixing. When Yixing arrived at the Dark Star Island, the first thing he saw was Wei Qingxian. Although Wei Qingxian had always believed that Yixing was still alive and had some guesses in her heart, she was still extremely excited when she saw Yixing. Yixing explained to Wei Qingxian that he was the one who had shot the arrow that day. He also told her about what he had done recently. However, before he could tell her in detail what had happened in the past 2 years, Yixing knew through his God's void-breaking eye that the upper echelons of the Dark Star sect had doubts about what had happened in Tianjing City. Hence, he came to the Dark Star Hall with Wei Qingxian. Although Yixing was already filled with joy after reuniting with Wei Qingxian after such a long time, seeing the Black Biao King again made him extremely excited. Yixing looked at the Black Biao King and nodded with a smile. "Of course I'm not dead. I'm living well. Furthermore, I've already killed Meng Tai. I've also destroyed the Great Yuan dynasty's dragon fate. The Great Yuan dynasty no longer exists." The Black Biao King was stunned. In the Dark Star Hall, all the kings of the Dark Star sect were stunned. Chapter 838. Previously, the kings didn't dare to believe the news of Meng Tai's death and the Great Yuan dynasty's destruction. Now, not only did Yixing confirm this news, but he also said that he had killed Meng Tai. This news shocked the kings even more. It could be said that they had watched Yixing grow up. Although Yixing's growth was very fast, he had only been a 7-star supremacy 2 years ago. No matter how fast he grew, it was impossible for him to reach such a level in just 2 years, right? Moreover, 2 years ago, Yixing had been hunted down by Meng Tai, and his whereabouts were unknown. Meng Tai had announced to the world that Yixing was dead. Now, just the appearance of Yixing was enough to make people feel like the dead had come back to life. This was shocking enough. Even the kings present couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The first to react was the Black Tiger King. His eyes were filled with shock, but more than that, he was pleasantly surprised. The Black Tiger King slapped Yixing's shoulder and laughed. "Good. Haha, I knew it. You're the demon star of chaos. These 2 years, I didn't believe you were dead either. Haha, as expected, not only did you not die, You even killed Meng Tai and destroyed the Great Yuan dynasty. You are indeed the Great Yuan dynasty's demon star of chaos, haha. Since Yi Xing had said it himself, it naturally couldn't be false. The Black Tiger King no longer doubted the news from Tianjing City. Star Dragon King, Xiaomu King, and the other kings also recovered from their shock. Their gazes towards Yi Xing changed greatly. In their hearts, Yi Xing's image had always been that of a junior. At best, he was a very talented junior with a lot of potential. However, in just 2 years, Yi Xing had already killed his way into the Great Yuan dynasty's palace alone, destroyed the Great Yuan dynasty's dragon fate, and killed the Great Yuan dynasty's supreme king, Meng Tai. Such an expert could be said to be peerless in the Star Continent. Wei Qingxian alone was enough to shock them. Now there was Yi Xing, who was even more heaven-defying. In the eyes of the kings, they could no longer associate Yi Xing with the junior of the past. Instead, he had become a peerless expert that even they had to look up to. Star Dragon King, Xiaomu King, and the other kings walked toward Yi Xing. They cupped their fists at Yi Xing and nodded slightly. Star Dragon King said, "The Da Yuan dynasty is our sect's archenemy. King Yi Xing killed Meng Tai and destroyed the Da Yuan dynasty. Our sect is grateful to you." Although Yi Xing had stayed in the Dark Star Church for a period of time, he was not an official disciple of the Dark Star Church. He had only been nurtured by the Dark Star Church because of the Black Biao King. Now, Star Dragon King could no longer treat Yi Xing as a genius of the Dark Star sect, but as a respected expert. They did not have a good relationship with Yi Xing like the Black Biao King. Naturally, they did not dare to be too casual in front of Yi Xing. Yi Xing nodded at the kings and said, "Star Dragon King, you don't have to be so polite. I have received many benefits from the Dark Star Church. It is my duty to contribute to the Dark Star Church. Now that Meng Tai is dead and the Da Yuan dynasty no longer exists, there are still many survivors. They are still powerful." Star Dragon King said, "Not to mention how many cultivators have died in the hands of the Da Yuan dynasty since the founding of the Dark Star Church. Just in the past few hundred years, a large number of experts and geniuses of the younger generation have been killed by the Da Yuan dynasty's cultivators. We must avenge them. Those who have been stained with the blood of our Dark Star Church's cultivators must not be spared." Black Biao King nodded and said, "That's right. Those people were once under the protection of the Da Yuan dynasty. Now that the Da Yuan dynasty has been destroyed, it is time to settle the score with them. There is no time to lose. Let's set out immediately to eliminate the survivors." The kings of the Dark Star Church nodded in unison. They all had their own enemies in the Da Yuan dynasty. Of course, it was not just Meng Tai alone. When the Da Yuan dynasty was at its peak, they could not do anything to it. Now that the Da Yuan dynasty had collapsed, they naturally had to settle the score. Yi Xing said, "The space in the Sea of Dark Prison is becoming more and more unstable. Once something happens, the Death Spirit King might invade. The human race is in danger. Everyone, please take your revenge. However, do not kill the innocent. Kill all of them and try to preserve the human race's strength." The Death Spirit King's invasion was too terrifying. The kings were stunned. Black Biao King said, "Are you serious?" Yi Xing nodded and said, "The Death Spirit King's soul that escaped that day has already been killed by me. Before he died, he said that it would not be long before the Sea of Dark Prison's spatial crack would be big enough for the Death Spirit King to pass through. Although he was trying to scare me, it might not be all empty words. Therefore, it is better to be prepared as soon as possible." Black Biao King said, "If that is the case, the Star Continent will face a great calamity. Let's do as Brother Yi Xing said. Those who have the blood of the Dark Star Church on their hands, kill them all. As for the others, spare them if possible." Yi Xing said, "That's good. Brother Black Biao, you decide what to do. I will not participate in these matters. I have to prepare for the dangers that we may face in the future." Black Biao King led the kings of the Dark Star Church and left the Dark Star Island for the Middle Sky Continent to deal with the Da Yuan dynasty. With Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian on the Dark Star Island, their safety was not an issue. It could be said that the kings of the Dark Star Church were all out. After the Black Biao King and the others left, Yi Xing told Wei Qingxian about his experiences in the past 2 years in detail. After learning that Yi Xing went to the Starry Crescent Land first, then to the Dark Star Continent and became a disciple of the Dark Star Temple, Wei Qingxian was shocked. Yi Xing was not even a king, but he had traveled to several starry crescent lands. This experience was indeed amazing. Wei Qingxian said, "One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune. Yi Xing has experienced so many dangers, but he still managed to escape death. He has encountered such a great opportunity. In the future, we will go to the Starry Crescent Land first, then to the Dark Star Continent. As a high-level continent, the Dark Star Continent may have a passage to the Samsara Palace." Yi Xing nodded and said, "With our current strength, it is more than enough to go to the Starry Crescent Land. However, we cannot ignore the threat of the King of Death Spirit. If the King of Death Spirit invades the Star Continent and we are not there, the warriors on the Star Continent will be killed. We have to solve this problem first, then go to the Starry Crescent Land." Wei Qingxian thought for a while and said, "I don't know how long we have to wait for the King of Death Spirit to invade. What if we wait for 8 or 10 years and nothing happens?" Yi Xing smiled and said, "Of course, I won't just wait like a fool. In these years, I will try my best to improve my cultivation and increase my strength as soon as possible. However, the most important thing is to study formations. In the Heavenly Bow continent, among the treasures I obtained, there are ancient books on formations. I even have quasi-god level 6 ancient books on formations. My talent in formations is even better than my talent in martial arts. If the King of Death Spirits doesn't invade in 8 or 10 years, I'm afraid I will have become a level 5 array grandmaster. I only need to leave some formations to protect the human tribe on the Starland." Chapter 839. Yi Xing stayed at the Dark Star Island for a few days before returning to the Falling Star sect to meet with Hua Tianfeng, Lin Tongyu, Gu Tiansheng, and the others. In the Heavenly Bow Hall, Yi Xing obtained a large number of treasures. Among them, there were treasures that could prolong one's life and heal injuries to one's life force. Chu Jingyue's injuries were completely healed, allowing her to regain her youth and increase her lifespan. After that, Yi Xing went to the old site of the Falling Star sect. The tortoise said that only when Yi Xing became a king and passed the king-level trial could he obtain all the treasures left behind by Emperor Xing Han. With Yi Xing's harvest in the Heavenly Bow continent, he was not very interested in the treasures in the Star Hall. Only the Star Hall itself was attractive to Yi Xing. Although the Star Hall was just a replica, it was not an ordinary divine artifact. If Yi Xing could use it, he would be able to exert a terrifying power that was far beyond his strength. Through the Star Token, Yi Xing entered the Star Hall. Yi Xing had absorbed Luo Tiangong's true god blood essence and became a king. He had built an extreme-grade imperial body. He had comprehended the true meaning of Tao from 3 great Taoists of heaven and earth. His ability to challenge those of a higher level was even better than when he was in the honorable realm. Of course, passing the king-level trial was not difficult. Whether it was the energy form of Yi Xing or the energy form of 1 to 3 levels higher than Yi Xing, they were all defeated by Yi Xing effortlessly. He easily completed the king-level trial. "Very good, very good." The tortoise praised again and again. His eyes were filled with amazement. "I didn't expect you to become a king so quickly and have such powerful strength. Compared to Master, your talent and potential are much higher." In the end, Xing Han Great Emperor only managed to cultivate to the level of a 9-star king and failed to become a quasi-god. As for Yi Xing, he was now a 5-star blue fate. In terms of talent, Yi Xing was naturally much higher than Xing Han Great Emperor. Moreover, in terms of strength, Yi Xing, who was in the same realm, far surpassed Great Emperor Xing Han. Emperor Xing Han relied on the Stellar Hall replica to reach the level of a 1 Nirvana quasi-god. He himself did not have the strength to challenge those of a higher level. Yi Xing was only a 1-star king, but he had the strength of a 6-star king. The two of them were naturally not on the same level. The tortoise continued, "Yi Xing, you have completed all the tests left behind by the master. From today onwards, you are the new master of the Star Hall. By refining the Star Hall, you can obtain everything left behind by the previous master." Yi Xing was overjoyed and asked, "How do I refine it?" The tortoise said, "Master, please follow me. The Stellar Hall still has a 5th level. Once you refine the heart of the 5th level, you will be able to control the Stellar Hall." Yi Xing was slightly surprised. Only then did he realize that the master that the pimp was talking about was him. and the fact that there was a fifth floor of the stellar hall made Yixing even more surprised. Soon, Yixing followed Mr. Tortoise to the fifth floor. What entered his eyes was a vast and boundless land of flames. With Yixing's normal eyesight, he could see thousands of miles just by looking. But even so, he still couldn't see the edge of this land of flames. The first 4 levels of the stellar hall were just small spaces. The fact that the 5th level had such a huge land of flames really exceeded Yixing's expectations. Seeing this, Mr. Tortoise explained, "Master, the space of the 5th level is hundreds of thousands of miles long and wide. However, there is no sun, moon, or stars. There is no alternating day and night. There is no normal air, only endless flames. It is not suitable for life to grow, so it is very barren." This place was indeed very barren. Although there were mountains, valleys, plains, and various other terrains, without exception, they were all burning with flames. However, even if it was just a barren world, such a large piece of land was located in the stellar hall. This made Yixing feel shocked. It was impossible for the stellar hall to be more than hundreds of thousands of miles wide and hundreds of thousands of miles tall because it was impossible to have so many materials. However, to be able to contain such a large piece of land, it definitely involved the Tao of space. Mr. Tortoise flew forward and said, "The world core is located in the center of the 5th level. Master, please follow me." Yixing followed behind Mr. Tortoise. In the center of his forehead, he opened his third eye and used the Divine Voidbreaker Eye. The Divine Voidbreaker Eye's gaze pierced through the void. Before long, Yixing had roughly seen this piece of land. Mr. Tortoise was right. This piece of land was indeed hundreds of thousands of miles wide. In the center, there was a red stone that contained a special energy that controlled everything in all directions. It was the world core. Not long after, Mr. Tortoise and Yixing arrived next to the world core. Yixing dripped a drop of blood into the world core. His spiritual power pierced into it and quickly refined the world core. In an instant, an indescribable feeling arose in Yixing's heart. The shape of the entire stellar hole appeared in his mind. Yixing was very clear about the treasures inside. The stellar hall was like Yixing's hands and feet that he could control at will. There were a large number of treasures inside the stellar hall, ranging from low-grade spirit grade to top-grade spirit grade, low-grade profound grade to top-grade profound grade. However, the lower the grade, the more treasures there were. The higher the grade, the fewer treasures there were. Although the disciples of the Dark Star Hall had obtained many treasures in the past 700 years, it was probably less than 1/10 of the total treasures inside the stellar hall. Especially the profound grade treasures. Other than Yixing, no one had obtained them. Mr. Tortoise waved his hand, and a medicine bottle flew out from the treasure space and appeared in front of Yixing. Yixing knew that this was a medicine bottle from the top-grade profound grade treasure area. He reached out and caught it, saying, "This is a top-grade profound grade pill, extreme body pill." "What are its effects?" Mr. Tortoise said, "It strengthens the body and also has the effect of increasing one's cultivation." Yixing nodded. Before, when he passed the martial saint, Taoist, and venerable level trials, the rewards he obtained were all pills that strengthened the body and increased one's cultivation. Yixing opened the bottle cap, swallowed the extreme body pill, and began to refine it. The strength of an imperial body was measured by the vitality, not the strength of the body. A top-grade imperial body was an immortal body, not an indestructible body. A top-grade imperial body's immortal body was not really immortal, but after being injured, it could be healed through a powerful vitality. Every time it was healed, it would consume vitality. Once the vitality was exhausted, it would still die. Therefore, even if it was a top-grade imperial body, one could not ignore the strength of the body. The higher the strength of the body, the less damage one would receive, and the less vitality one would need to recover from injuries. Then, a top-grade imperial body would be able to last longer in battle. Otherwise, if one's body was too weak, one's body would be destroyed by a single blow. Without reaching the realm of blood rebirth, even if one had an immortal body, they would still die instantly. A top-grade imperial body's absorption of physical energy was extremely fast. In just half an hour, the medicinal efficacy of the extreme body pill was completely absorbed by Yixing, and the strength of his body skyrocketed. Yixing could feel that just by relying on the strength of his body, he was probably comparable to a 5-star king. Moreover, Yixing's Star Dipper had been greatly strengthened, and his cultivation had taken another step forward, becoming a 2-star king. Chapter 840. Feeling the surging power in his body, Yixing smiled. With the breakthrough in his cultivation and the strengthening of his physical body, Yixing's strength had risen by yet another notch. A high-level king realm expert could be called an emperor. Although there was only one level difference between a 6-star king and a 7-star king, there was a huge difference in strength. When Yixing was a 1-star king, he could use the Sagittarius constellation to unleash the strength of a 6-star king, but it was only equivalent to an ordinary 6-star king. Some kings who had the ability to challenge those of a higher level might not be able to compete with a 7-star king after becoming a 6-star king. However, their strength was much stronger than an ordinary 6-star king. Right now, Yixing's strength was probably not inferior to these extremely powerful 6-star king realm geniuses. Although I haven't reached the level of a 7-star king warrior yet, with the black hole astral form, I might be able to fight against a 7-star death spirit king head-on. I don't know how long it will take for the Death Spirit King to invade. In a few years, my cultivation will continue to improve, and then I will be able to kill a 7-star Death Spirit King head-on. Then, I won't be afraid of the Death Spirit King invading the Star Continent. Yixing hoped that the Death Spirit King would not invade too soon. Now, his formation was not complete yet. If he encountered a 7-star Death Spirit King, he would barely be able to compete with it. In a few years, his cultivation would increase, and even if a 7-star Death Spirit King invaded the Starry Continent, Yixing would be able to deal with it. Congratulations, Master. With your strength, it will be easy for you to go to the Starry Crescent Land. The tortoise congratulated him and said, "The old master had a last wish. He hoped that after you get his belongings and go to the Starry Crescent Land, you could avenge him and kill all the enemies who had plotted against him." 700 years have passed. Most of the enemies who plotted against the old master have reached the end of their lifespans, but one of them is definitely still alive. Yixing asked, "Who?" Mr. Tortoise said, "Xianxia. Kings have a lifespan of 1,000 years. Every time a quasi-god goes through nirvana, their lifespan will increase by 1,000 years. A quasi-god in nirvana can live for 2,000 years. Xianxia was more than 500 years old back then, and now he is more than 1,200 years old. As long as he is not killed by others, he should still be alive." A figure appeared in Yixing's mind. He said, "Xianxia, I've seen him before. Back in the Starry Crescent Land, he wanted to kill me as well. As long as I have the chance, I will definitely kill Xianxia to avenge Emperor Xinghan and vent my anger." The tortoise said, "This guy is indeed still alive. I must watch him die." Yixing nodded and said, "Mr. Tortoise, what abilities does the Starry Hall have? As a divine artifact, I should be able to use it to kill my enemies." Mr. Tortoise said, "Of course you can. However, with your current strength you can control the Starry Hall to move, but it is not enough to unleash its power. The Starry Hall can be used for both offense and defense. When attacking, it can trigger the flames on the 5th floor, which can burn gods. You need to cultivate a fire elemental technique called the Starglaze technique. When defending, the Starry Hall can transform into a star to defend all directions. Similarly, you need to cultivate the Starglaze technique to be able to defend against the attacks of gods. Defense could withstand the attacks of gods, and attack had the power to kill gods." Yixing was very excited. If he could cultivate the Starglaze technique, wouldn't his strength reach the god level? Yixing said excitedly, "What about the Starglaze technique? Where is it kept in the Starry Hall? Why haven't I found it?"
Mr. Tortoise could not help but touch his forehead and said, "Master, the Starglaze technique is not an ordinary technique.
It was obtained by the old master from the Star Secret Realm. Moreover, the old master only had a superficial knowledge of it, not even at the entry level. He could barely move the Starry Hall and unleash the most basic power.
If the old master had learned the Starglaze technique, he would not have been able to be compared to a first nirvana quasi-god, and he would not have been killed by Xianxia and the others."
Yixing's hot-bloodedness immediately cooled down. He said, "So there is no Starglaze technique? Although I can control the Star Palace, I can't use it to attack, nor can I use it to defend. Isn't that completely useless?" Mr. Tortoise thought for a while and said, "It's not completely useless. The Starry Hall is incomparably sturdy. Even if you can't unleash its power, just as a hard weapon, it has boundless power and can smash someone to death. Moreover, if the master encounters a strong enemy, He can also hide in the Starry Hall. Even a quasi-god can't destroy the Starry Hall. In the Starry Hall, your defense can be considered invincible. Yi Xing nodded slightly. What Mr. Tortoise said made sense. However, after thinking carefully, Yi Xing felt that something was wrong.
He said, Mr. Tortoise, can't others snatch the Starry Hall and forcibly refine it?
Oh.
Mr. Tortoise nodded and said, if other martial artists want to refine the Starry Hall, they have to at least defeat my will first. I, Mr. Tortoise, have lived for so long. I'm not someone who can be shaken by the will of a mere king. Only experts above the quasi-god level have the possibility of forcibly refining the Starry Hall. Now, Yi Xing was clear in his heart. The Starry Hall could only be considered safe against martial artists below the quasi-god level. If he encountered an enemy of the quasi-god level, then there was no need to hide in the Starry Hall. It was better to escape as far as possible. Yi Xing sighed and said, the Star Mystery Realm is located in the Dark Star Continent. It seems that only by reaching the Dark Star Continent can one enter the Star Mystery Realm and have the hope of obtaining the Starglaze technique. The Star Mystery Realm could only be entered by martial artists above the 9-star king level. The method left behind by Luo Tiangong could directly send people into the Star Mystery Realm. After Yi Xing became a 9-star king, he could deal with it together. Yi Xing left the Starry Hall. With a thought, the Starry Hall shrunk and fell into his palm. Without the Starry Hall, the fallen Star Mystery Realm lost its power. The formations and restrictions dissipated directly, leaving only the sea of fire formed by the outer flame. The situation in the Star Continent changed. The Great Yuan dynasty was destroyed, and the remnants were hunted down by the Dark Star sect. Some martial artists whose hands were stained with the blood of the Dark Star sect's martial artists were all eliminated. At the same time, some forces that were once oppressed by the Great Yuan dynasty took advantage of the situation and began to encircle and annihilate the disciples of the Meng royal family. The Meng family was originally the #1 family in the Star Continent. Now that everyone wanted to kill them, they had no choice but to conceal their identity and completely disappear from the stage of the Star Continent. The Dark Star sect's power was like the sky, and all the forces in the world submitted to them. A new dynasty, the Dark Star dynasty, was established. Yi Xing did not pay attention to all of this. He only borrowed the power of the Dark Star sect to collect the ancient books on formations in the world. He used his superbrain to scan them and then compared them with the ancient books he obtained in the Heavenly Bow continent. As he cultivated, he studied formations, waiting for the disaster of the human race in the Star Continent to arrive. Chapter 844. The stronger Yi Xing was, the greater the benefits of devouring Yi Xing's flesh and blood would be. With Yi Xing's strength, devouring him was no different from devouring a 7-star king. However, there wasn't even a mid-step king on the Star Continent. Devouring a 7-star king was simply an extravagant hope. However, with Yi Xing, this extravagant hope became hope. King Wuba was naturally pleasantly surprised. A large number of dead spirits lived in the death realm of the Star Continent. King Wuba was the strongest expert in this realm. Among the 4 7-star death spirit kings, his strength was undoubtedly the strongest. Even if the 3 7-star death spirit kings, King Wu Gu, King Ha Ling, and King Zadu joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for King Wuba. Therefore, although Yi Xing's strength surprised King Wuba, he still had full confidence in killing Yi Xing, seeing that King Ha Ling and King Zadu were in a dangerous situation under Yi Xing's attack. King Wuba suddenly attacked. King Wuba's figure was like the wind, drifting behind Yi Xing in an instant. The green hair on his body shone brightly, and his aura instantly erupted. Xiao. Blue fingernails grew out of King Wuba's 5 fingers. Like sharp blades, they suddenly shot towards the back of Yi Xing's head. King Wuba's sudden attack on Yi Xing wasn't inferior to Yi Xing's previous attack on King Ha Ling and King Zadu. It was also unpredictable and hard to guard against. Yi Xing was very clear about King Wuba's sneak attack. However, Yi Xing didn't guard against it in advance, nor did he dodge. Instead, he allowed King Wuba's attack to come. Bang! With a loud explosion, the power of King Wuba's attack was so terrifying that even Vajra mysterious iron would be smashed to pieces. Yi Xing's head also exploded. The martial artists of the Star Continent all cried out in alarm, their expressions instantly turning into terror. The strength that Yi Xing had erupted with was beyond the expectations of the martial artists. The martial artists had already regarded Yi Xing as their only hope to contend against the undead army. Now, Yi Xing's head had been smashed by King Wuba, and all the warriors turned pale in an instant. Once Yi Xing died, their flesh and blood would soon be devoured by the King of Death Spirit and turned into human skeletons. Even the Black Biao King's expression changed at this moment. Only Wei Qingxian, who knew that Yi Xing had constructed a supreme-grade imperial body and possessed an immortal body, remained calm. Yi Xing's head exploded, but he did not die instantly as the warriors had imagined. Instead, as his head exploded, he instantly turned around and grabbed Wuba Wang's wrist. Although he did not have a head, Yi Xing's strength did not change. He grabbed Wuba Wang's wrist and swung it. Wuba Wang and Yi Xing instantly changed directions. Yi Xing had suffered such a serious injury, but he did not die. This was beyond King Wuba's expectations, so he naturally relaxed his guard at this moment. Just as the two of them changed directions, Yi Xing also put his 5 fingers together and thrust them towards Wuba Wang's chest. 3 kinds of true meaning of Tao, the power of the vermilion bird celestial phase, the power of the arrow intent, and all kinds of forces gathered in this thrust, making it not only powerful, but also had a terrifying penetrating power. Bang! Yi Xing's 5 fingers struck Wuba Wang's chest, and as if he had struck a piece of fine steel, a loud explosion rang out. Wuba Wang's body instantly shot backwards, and a fist-sized dent appeared on his chest because of Yi Xing's thrust, but in the end, it did not reveal the corpse jade. In the blink of an eye, Wuba Wang hit the ground with a loud bang. At this moment, the flesh on Yi Xing's neck wriggled, and a head grew out. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. Yi Xing's head was first blown up, and then it grew out. On the other hand, Wuba Wang was sent flying by Yi Xing's thrust, and his corpse jade almost fell out and he died. All the martial artists were dumbfounded. His head could grow back after it was gone, and this completely subverted their understanding. In the history of the Starland, the genius kings had at most built a middle-grade imperial body. How could they know the mysteries of a top-grade imperial body? Yi Xing secretly sighed in pity. Wuba Wang's body was even stronger than a middle-grade dark weapon. Otherwise, the blow just now would have brought out his corpse jade and killed him. However, Yi Xing had already expected that this blow might not be able to kill Wuba Wang. Therefore, when he attacked, he changed the direction of Wuba Wang's body. This blow did not kill Wuba Wang, but it also sent him into the formation area. Just like Ha Ling King and Jia Du King, he was surrounded by layers of formations. Wuba Wang. Ha Ling King and Jia Du King's figures flashed and arrived at the place where Wuba Wang had fallen. Even Wuba Wang had suffered a loss in the hands of this 3-star king. They were shocked. Wuba Wang instantly stood up and touched the dent on his chest. Wuba Wang was also scared, and his heart was filled with anger. With his strength, if he did not think that Yi Xing was dead and let his guard down, he would not have been hit in the chest by Yi Xing and almost lost his life. Wuba Wang's empty eyes stared at Yi Xing and said, "You have built a top-grade imperial body, and have an immortal body. Good, very good. Devouring your flesh and blood is better than devouring the flesh and blood of 10 7-star kings. No, 100 of them." Yi Xing smiled faintly. Now that Wuba Wang had entered the formation, he could not escape from the palm of his hand. Yi Xing smiled and said, "Unfortunately, you are now a turtle in a jar. Haha, you can't even save your own life, and you still want to eat me." Wuba Wang snorted coldly and said, "You are indeed very strong, but you are still no match for me. I was too careless just now. Do you think you can trap me with these formations? Humph. In at most 10 breaths of time, I'll be able to completely destroy all of these formations and break them clean." Yi Xing smiled and said, 10 breaths? Enough to kill you." As he spoke, a ray of starlight shot up into the sky and turned into a huge starlight bow. Yi Xing used the Sagittarius constellation, and his aura soared again, and his strength increased greatly. The power of the Sagittarius constellation and the power of the arrow complemented each other, forming a terrifying penetrating power. Even the devil's face formed by the power of the 100,000 undead army was affected by this penetrating power and showed signs of collapsing. Looking at the Sagittarius constellation in the sky, Wuba Wang's face changed greatly. Constellation? You have been hiding your strength? Wu Ba Wang's voice suddenly became a little frightened. If he had known that Yi Xing was so powerful, he would have chosen to retreat and run away. He would first enjoy the flesh and blood of other creatures instead of fighting such a powerful existence head-on. Wu Ba Wang suddenly let out a shrill scream and roared, "Guguha!" Only the undead king, who had grown to stage 5 and condensed his spiritual will into a soul, would have a strong subjective consciousness. The undead spirits below stage 5 had no fear and would absolutely obey the orders of their superiors. As soon as Wu Ba Wang gave the order, the 100,000 undead army immediately rushed over. Even the undead king, who had a strong subjective consciousness and was used to Wu Ba Wang's orders, also rushed over while screaming. Chapter 845. Seeing that Yi Xing had used the constellations, King Wu Ba knew that he was no match for him. If he wasn't restrained by the formation, with his sturdy body, King Wu Ba believed that it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape. However, he was now trapped by the formation. Even if it was just a level 5 formation that he didn't think highly of, it had become his prison, restricting his movements. King Wu Ba had just experienced how strong Yi Xing's attacks were. Now that Yi Xing had used the Sagittarius constellation, his strength had increased greatly, and it was enough to threaten King Wu Ba's life. If King Wu Ba tried to break the formation, he would have to face Yi Xing's fatal attack. If he didn't break the formation, he wouldn't be able to escape. If he continued to defend, he would lose his life. He was caught in a dilemma. Therefore, King Wu Ba immediately ordered the undead army to attack. At the same time, King Wu Ba also ordered King Ha Ling and King Zadu to break through with all their strength, while he fought Yi Xing with all his strength to buy time. There were 2 7-star undead kings inside, and 100,000 undead army outside. It wouldn't take too long to break these level 5 formations. Therefore, as long as they delayed Yi Xing for a while, they would be able to escape once the formation was broken. King Wu Ba couldn't help but feel a trace of joy in his heart. As long as he could escape this calamity, there would be a large amount of flesh and blood in this world for him to enjoy. He didn't believe that there would be a second person on this continent who was as heaven-defying as this young man in front of him. The undead army's roars shook heaven and earth. The corners of Yi Xing's mouth curled up. Everything was within his expectations. In the past 6 months, he had set up dozens of level 5 formations. Among them, there were bewildering formations, illusion formations, and trapping formations. Each formation was enough to trap a 6-star king. With dozens of formations, even a 7-star king would need some time to break them. Yi Xing was very confident that his opponent wouldn't have enough time. In Yi Xing's view, the 100,000 undead army charging over was just walking right into a trap. If the army of 100,000 dead spirits scattered and fled, Yi Xing wouldn't be able to split himself into 2, and the number of martial arts experts on the star continent was limited. It would be really difficult to chase after them. If they rushed into the area of the formation he had set up, he could use the formation to trap them and kill them all. Yi Xing drew his golden flame bow, and a black flame arrow condensed and shot out. Sharp claws grew out of King Wu Ba's 10 fingers, and his strength exploded to the limit as he grabbed at the black flame arrow. The sharp claws collided with the arrow, and sparks flew everywhere. King Wu Ba's body was pushed back, and he crashed into the light shield of the formation. He was at an absolute disadvantage. However, as a 7-star Death Spirit King, his body was extremely sturdy. Even though the impact was heavy, he was completely fine. Wu Ba King was still lively as he bellowed, "Although your attack is strong, it can't do anything to this king. When this king escapes, I will definitely slaughter all the humans I see on this continent." Hee. "Human, you are very strong, but so what? You can't stop this king." Yi Xing laughed and said, "Who says I can't stop you?" As soon as his voice fell, Yi Xing used another kind of astrology. The black hole astrology appeared and formed a dark world in an instant, enveloping King Wu Ba, King Ha Ling, and King Zadu. Suddenly, it was pitch black in front of them, and they couldn't even see their own fingers. The 3 Death Spirit Kings were shocked, and King Ha Ling even exclaimed, "What's going on? I can't see anything?" At this moment, the army of dead spirits had already entered the area of the formation. Layers of formations were activated one after another. Some were illusory formations, which made the dead spirits fall into an illusory world. Some were trapping formations, which trapped the dead spirits in the light shield of the formation. Don't let these dead spirits escape. Kill them while they are trapped in the formation.
King Heibiao bellowed.
Yixing had already discussed with him that when the army of dead spirits fell into the formation, it would be the time for the warriors of the Star Continent to attack. As long as they didn't enter the area of the formation, they wouldn't be affected by the formation, and the warriors could attack from a distance.
Everyone, be careful.
Don't enter the formation.
Wei Qingxian was the fastest.
She rushed to the front and slapped with her palm. The white cold gang qi instantly froze a few thousand meters. Except for the middle-level death spirit kings, the rest of the dead spirits were all frozen. Behind Wei Qingxian, the attacks of the kings and venerables covered the sky and covered the earth as they attacked the frozen dead spirits. The ice crystals shattered, and the bodies of the fourth-level green-haired dead spirits were shattered into pieces like the ice crystals. The corpse jades fell out of their bodies directly. As for the fifth-level green-haired dead spirits, their bodies were much sturdier. The shattering of the ice crystals only caused partial damage to their bodies. Some had their arms and legs cracked, some had their heads cracked, and some had their bodies cracked. However, as long as the corpse jades were still there, they could still move. When the formation was in operation, there were obvious light shields of the formation in the void. The warriors were outside the area of the formation, and they attacked from a distance. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 green-haired dead spirits were killed. King Wuba, King Haling, and King Zadu were trapped in the dark world. The first thing they did was to protect their chests. For the dead spirits, the corpse jades on their chests were their only weakness. Whoosh! A pair of blue wings appeared behind Yixing. His figure was like a bolt of lightning, and he instantly rushed into the layers of formations that surrounded the 3 7-star dead spirit kings. The other party was defending their chests with all their strength.
Yixing could only break through in close combat. Yixing's speed was too fast.
In the dark world, the dead spirits' reactions were slightly slower.
Yixing appeared beside King Haling in an instant.
Before King Haling could react, Yixing grabbed his wrist and flung him hard. Yixing's fling was so powerful that King Haling's body flew up. He lost his center of gravity, and the other claw that was protecting his chest suddenly moved away. Whoosh! Yixing's other hand closed together like a bird's beak, and he suddenly raised it.
His fingertips shone brightly.
Like an arrow, it contained a terrifying penetrating power and fiercely shot into King Haling's chest. The power of this shot was too terrifying, especially when it contained the power of the Sagittarius constellation. Its penetrating power was even more terrifying. Gotcha! King Haling's chest instantly shattered. Yixing's 5 fingers pierced into King Haling's chest. When he came out, Yixing's 5 fingers had already grabbed a piece of white stone as smooth as jade. It was King Haling's corpse jade. Without the corpse jade, King Haling's body instantly lost its source of power and became uncontrollable. I'm going to take your body. King Haling's soul roared angrily, and rushed into Yixing's body in the blink of an eye. The spiritual will of the 7-star dead spirit king wanted to seize Yixing's body. However, when King Haling's soul appeared in the space between Yixing's eyebrows, what greeted him was a pale flame, the starfire seed. This was simply throwing himself into a trap. The starfire seed instantly enveloped King Haling's soul, leaving only mournful screams. However, the screams that occurred in the space between Yixing's eyebrows could not be heard by outsiders. King Haling, how are you? King Zadu shouted anxiously. He was terrified.
Chapter 846.
King Haling said, "He wants you to accompany him." As soon as King Zadu's voice fell, Yixing's voice sounded from beside him. In the dark world, Yixing came and went without a trace, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Although King Zadu was a level 7 death spirit king, he didn't know where Yixing was. All of a sudden, King Zadu heard Yixing's voice, which startled him. Boom! King Zadu's reaction was extremely fast. Although he was shocked, he wasn't careless in his actions. As soon as he heard Yixing's voice, he punched out. The void collapsed and the space of the world of darkness shook. A giant fist shadow appeared in front of him. It had the power to destroy mountains. This fist shadow flashed and disappeared. It didn't hit Yixing. Moreover, the The world of darkness was too vast. Although the fist energy was strong, it could only shake this space. It couldn't destroy the world of darkness. King Jianghu's attack missed. He was horrified and cursed inwardly. Whoosh! At this time, a sharp sound broke through the air behind King Jianghu. By the time King Jianghu heard the sound, it was already too late. A terrifying penetrative power struck his back, directly breaking through his sturdy body. In the blink of an eye, the corpse jade at his heart was pulled out. King Jianghu lost control of his body. King Wuba, save me! King Jianghu's soul rushed out of his body and screamed. Just now, King Haling had wanted to take over Yi Xing's body. But looking at Yi Xing's lively appearance, King Haling had failed. Although King Jianghu didn't know why King Haling had failed, he didn't dare to try. He didn't want to walk the same path as King Haling. However, although King Jianghu was cautious, not taking over Yi Xing's body didn't mean there was no danger. Yi Xing's speed was as fast as lightning. He shuttled through the world of darkness and easily caught up with King Jianghu's soul. Whoosh! A pale white flame suddenly appeared. Yi Xing slapped it into King Jianghu's soul. Ah! King Jianghu immediately let out a miserable shriek. Fire seed. It's the fire seed. King Wuba, save me! Save me! Under the burning of the star flame, King Jianghu's screams became weaker and weaker. King Wuba couldn't even protect himself. Naturally, he couldn't save King Jianghu. Furthermore, after hearing King Jianghu's words, King Wuba's heart was filled with fear. The fire seed was a treasure that naturally countered soul bodies. At the beginning, he thought that even if his body was destroyed, his opponent wouldn't be able to do anything to his soul. However, from the looks of it now, even his soul body wouldn't be able to escape death. King Jianghu was still letting out weak screams. King Wuba said loudly, "Human, please let me live. I swear that I will lead my army back to the world of death and never step into this world of living creatures again." By the time King Wuba finished speaking, King Jianghu had already lost his voice. His soul had been incinerated by the star fire seed. In the dark world, King Wuba was vigilant, waiting for Yi Xing's answer. "I don't believe you. Since you've come to the star continent, don't even think about leaving. So, you'd better die." Yi Xing's voice came from all directions of the dark world. Sometimes it came from the left, sometimes it came from the right, sometimes it came from the front, and sometimes it came from the back. Obviously, when Yi Xing was talking, he was moving quickly in the dark world. King Wuba couldn't determine Yi Xing's location. Yi Xing's answer was not the answer that King Wuba wanted to hear. He immediately became somewhat agitated. King Wuba became excited and shouted, "Human, do you really want to fight to the death? If I die, my army of 100,000 will definitely scatter and flee. No matter how strong you are, how many can you kill? There will always be dead souls escaping. At that time, the human clan will no longer have a peaceful day. While you're still alive, you may be able to protect the human clan from extinction. But after 1,000 years, when your lifespan is up, this world of living creatures will be massacred by my dead soul clan. The human clan will definitely perish. As long as you let me go, I can lead my army back to the world of death with a single order. The human clan will be safe and sound." Human clan. Do you want this world to be safe and sound? Or do you want the human clan to perish and the dead souls to massacre the world in the future? Yi Xing smiled coldly. What King Wuba said was indeed a big problem. However, Yi Xing had the void-breaking divine eyes, so he could see everything in this world. Even if there were dead souls who were lucky enough to escape from the war and lurk in the star continent, they couldn't escape Yi Xing's eyes. Only when I catch all of you dead souls in one fell swoop can the human clan be truly safe and sound. King Wuba, King Haling, and King Jianghu are waiting for you on the road to the underworld. You should go with them. Yi Xing's voice rang out. At the same time, a black flame arrow shot through the void toward King Wuba. The black flame arrow shuttled through the dark world silently. It was not until it was within 100 meters of King Wuba that King Wuba sensed that a terrifying attack was coming at him. At such a short distance, even if King Wuba had sensed it, it was already too late. He couldn't dodge it and could only block it. King Wuba's strength was much stronger than King Haling and King Jianghu, and his reaction was also much faster. His sharp claws flashed and collided with the black flame arrow in the blink of an eye. There was a loud explosion and sparks flew. King Wuba's finger was broken, and his body flew backward. The black flame arrow was blocked by King Wuba. A broken finger was nothing to King Wuba. However, Yi Xing's attack wasn't just this arrow. Whoosh! As King Wuba flew backward, Yi Xing's second attack followed. His 5 fingers closed together and his fingertips shot out like arrows toward King Wuba's chest. Bang! King Wuba covered his chest with one hand, blocking Yi Xing's attack and breaking another finger. At the same time, King Wuba's other claw swept out. It was like a sharp blade, sweeping toward Yi Xing's head. Yi Xing was lurking in the dark world, so King Wuba didn't know where Yi Xing was. However, the two of them were fighting in close combat, so King Wuba could naturally accurately determine Yi Xing's position. Although Yi Xing's attack power was stronger, his physical body was not as strong as King Wuba's. His head naturally couldn't withstand King Wuba's attack. Yi Xing's other hand swept out to block King Wuba's attack. His hand that was attacking King Wuba's chest continued to attack rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged more than 10 moves. Yi Xing's attack power contained the penetrating power of the arrow intent. Its destructive power was too terrifying. Although King Wuba kept blocking, his entire palm was cut off piece by Yi Xing until it completely disappeared. As for the arm that Yi Xing used to block King Wuba's attack, because his physical body wasn't as strong as King Wuba's, it was more serious. Not only was his palm gone, but his entire arm was also cut into pieces by King Wuba's sharp claws. King Wuba had lost a palm, while Yi Xing had lost an entire arm. It seemed that Yi Xing's loss was more serious. However, for Yi Xing, who had an immortal body, the result was the opposite. After a fierce exchange, Yi Xing immediately retreated and sneaked into the dark world. His flesh and blood wriggled, and the destroyed arm immediately grew out. As for King Wuba, although his body was strong, he had lost as much as he had lost. If he wanted to regrow it, he would need a large amount of flesh and blood energy to replenish it, and it would also take a long time. Yi Xing recovered from his injuries. He pulled the golden flame bow in the distance and first shot an arrow to repel King Wuba. Then, he instantly rushed forward and launched a storm of attacks on King Wuba. This time, King Wuba had lost a palm, so his defense was greatly weakened. He could no longer resist Yi Xing's attacks. In the blink of an eye, his chest was pierced by Yi Xing, and his corpse jade was dug out. Chapter 847. As soon as the corpse jade was dug out, King Wuba's soul left his body. With layers of restrictions, King Wuba's soul had nowhere to run. He could only scream and rush toward Yi Xing. "I'm going to fight you to the death. You'll die with me." As soon as he finished speaking, King Wuba's soul rushed into Yi Xing's body. In the blink of an eye, it reached the space between Yi Xing's eyebrows. The stellar fire seed had been waiting for King Wuba's soul to fall into the trap in the space between Yi Xing's eyebrows. King Wuba already knew that Yi Xing had a fire seed from King Zadu. He knew that his soul would be burned by the stellar fire seed, but King Wuba was not afraid at all. Instead, he roared crazily, "Secret soul technique, explosion!" Boom! As soon as King Wuba's voice fell, a terrifying power erupted from his soul, like a bomb exploding. The stellar fire seed had just touched King Wuba's soul when it was pushed away by this explosive force. The soul was intangible, so the explosive force was intangible as well. It did not cause any damage to Yi Xing's space between his eyebrows. However, the intangible ripples of the explosion rushed toward Yi Xing's spiritual will. Obviously, the explosive force could only hurt the intangible spiritual will. "I'm going to die. You're going to die too." King Wuba's remaining spiritual will let out a final scream. However, just as the intangible ripples of the explosion approached the spiritual will in the center of the space between his eyebrows, the black hole astrology suddenly moved. It turned into a huge black hole vortex that almost covered the entire space between his eyebrows. The explosive ripples instantly fell into the black hole vortex and were crushed into pieces. They turned into spiritual origin power and were swallowed by the black hole vortex. They became nourishment for Yi Xing's spiritual will. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing felt that his spiritual will had become much stronger. His arrow will had become sharper and showed signs of breaking through to a higher level. If King Wuba's soul hadn't self-destructed using a secret technique, Yi Xing could only use the starfire seed to incinerate it. he wouldn't have been able to devour it directly. King Wuba had probably never expected such a result. Ha-Ling King, Jiadu King, Wuba King. The 3 7-star Death Spirit Kings had died one after another at the hands of Yi Xing. It was a long story, but in reality, it had only taken a little more than 10 breaths of time. The undead army had just charged into the formation not long ago. The battle with the Star Continent's martial artists had just begun. Furthermore, there were at least 100,000 undead spirits in the army, and they stretched for dozens of li. Only half of them had managed to make it into the formation. Those who were at the back had yet to make it in. As soon as King Wuba died, these dead spirits all sensed it. King Wuba was the absolute ruler of the Death Realm on the Star Continent. He was the only leader. The death of King Wuba had a great impact on the undead army. Even those green-haired dead spirits, who didn't have strong subjective awareness, were frightened. The order and restraint of King Wuba faded with his death. A large number of green-haired dead spirits turned around and began to flee out of fear. As for the Death Spirit Kings, who had strong subjective awareness, of course, they were even more aware of the danger. Even King Wuba had been killed. How could these Death Spirit Kings be a match for him? Of course, they also wanted to flee. However, the green-haired dead spirits at the back had not yet been trapped in the formation, so they could escape. As for the green-haired dead spirits trapped in the formation, the green-haired Death Spirit Kings couldn't escape even if they wanted to. After killing King Wuba, Yi Xing immediately attacked the other Death Spirit Kings, especially the middle-level Death Spirit Kings. Except for Wei Qingxian and Black Biao King, the other martial artists' attacks couldn't cause any harm to the middle-level Death Spirit Kings. There were many middle-level Death Spirit Kings. They wanted to break out of the formation with all their strength. These formations couldn't hold them for too long, so they had to seize the opportunity to kill them. Not to mention that killing one of them would reduce the danger to the human race. Just the corpse jades in their chests were priceless treasures that could only be found by chance. Those were treasures that could allow even King Realm cultivators to rapidly increase their cultivation. To deal with a 7-star Death Spirit King, even if it was just an ordinary Death Spirit King like King Ha-Ling and King Zadu, Yi Xing had to spend some effort. Dealing with a middle-level Death Spirit King was much easier. Yi Xing rushed into the middle-level Death Spirit Kings like a tiger in a flock of sheep. The world of darkness enveloped them, and they all became lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Yi Xing was as fast as a phantom, shuttling back and forth in the world of darkness. Wherever he passed, the chests of the middle-level Death Spirit Kings were shattered, and their corpse jades were dug out. As for the souls of the middle-level Death Spirit Kings, they didn't have any actual attacking power, so they couldn't break the formation. Yi Xing wasn't in a hurry to kill them. First, he killed the middle-level Death Spirit Kings whose bodies were still alive. There were over 5,000 Death Spirit Kings, and most of them were low-level Death Spirit Kings. While Yi Xing was slaughtering the middle-level Death Spirit Kings, Wei Qingxian was also slaughtering the low-level Death Spirit Kings. Her icy aura combined with the attacks of the other kings killed a large number of them. As for the souls of the low-level Death Spirit Kings, Wei Qingxuan's reincarnation light could easily kill them. Now that Wei Qingxian was a 3-star king, it was much easier for her to use the reincarnation light than when she was a 1-star king. She could use it many times in a row. Furthermore, the reincarnation light had many levels. The higher the level, the more powerful it was, and the more energy it consumed. Killing the souls of low-level Death Spirit Kings only required the lowest level of reincarnation light. With Wei Qingxuan's strength, it wouldn't be a problem for her to use it hundreds of times in a row. Although there were a lot of undead creatures, when one's strength reached the king level, numbers weren't the key factor in a battle. The battle between the strongest was the real key to a battle. The strongest of the undead creatures had been killed by Yi Xing. The result of this battle was naturally a great victory for the human race. While Yi Xing was killing the middle-level Death Spirit Kings, he also used his void-breaking god eye to observe the distance. He found that most of the green-furred undead creatures had fled into the depths of the Sea of Black prison. Clearly, they wanted to escape back to the world of death. However, there were also some who left the group after escaping into the Sea of Black prison. These green-furred undead creatures took a detour and headed towards the Star Continent from other directions. Clearly, they had already developed intelligence and weren't willing to give up on the delicious flesh of the living world. Yi Xing immediately transmitted his voice to the Black Tiger King, telling him the location of these green-furred undead creatures and asking him to lead a group of kings to intercept them. Along the Sea of Black Prison, Ling Daochen had set up many teleportation formations that could be used to reach any area on the edge of the Sea of Black Prison. With the information provided by Yi Xing, the Black Tiger King immediately led a group of kings to intercept the green-furred undead creatures that were trying to enter the Star Continent from other places. With Yi Xing's void-breaking eye monitoring, naturally, no undead creatures were able to cross the line of defense. As time passed, the Death Spirit King gradually fell, and the battle came to an end. In the end, all the undead creatures trapped in the formation were annihilated. The Death Spirit King's soul was also annihilated. Yi Xing obtained a large amount of mystic corpse jades. Chapter 848. A high risk meant a high reward. The invasion of the dead spirits was a great calamity, but it was also a great opportunity. If they couldn't deal with the army of dead spirits, it would be a great disaster. If they could, it would be a great opportunity. More than half of the army of dead spirits that invaded the Star Continent had fallen, and a small portion had escaped back to the world of death. Every dead spirit had a corpse jade on them. This meant that the martial artists of the Star Continent had obtained tens of thousands of profound-grade corpse jades, which had a great effect on the strength of venerables and kings. Among them, the one with the greatest harvest was Yi Xing. Most of the mid-level death spirit kings had died in Yi Xing's hands, so their corpse jades were naturally obtained by Yi Xing. Other than Yi Xing, the one with the most corpse jades was Wei Qingxian. Most of the low-level death spirit kings had died in her hands. The rest of the martial artists had more or less gained something. After experiencing such an opportunity, the strength of the human race of the Star Continent increased rapidly. A large number of Ninth Star venerables had broken through to the Star Sea realm and became kings because of the corpse jades. The Star Continent ushered in a true peak of martial arts, and the number of kings exceeded that of any previous era. Another year had passed, and it had been 6 years on the Dark Star. This was the 14th year since Yi Xing had come to the Star Continent. After his 29th birthday, his cultivation had increased rapidly because of the corpse jades. He and Wei Qingxian had both broken through to the 4th level of the Star Sea realm and become mid-level kings. This time, the spatial fluctuations in the Sea of Black Prison lasted for more than half a year before calming down. The passage between the world of death and the world of death was finally cut off. The threat of the world of death was finally eliminated. According to the usual practice, the next invasion of the dead spirits would have to wait for at least tens of thousands of years. Yi Xing's strength had already reached the peak of the Star Continent, and he was absolutely invincible. Now that there were no more threats on the Star Continent, it was time to head to the Starry Crescent Continent. Star Continent, Western Continent, Far West Land. High up in the sky above a barren desert, there was a huge spatial whirlpool. Outside the spatial whirlpool, Yi Xing, Wei Qingxian, and the Black Biao King stood together. Brother Yi Xing, I really want to go to Starry Crescent Land with you. The Black Biao King looked at Yi Xing and said, Unfortunately, the Dark Star Dynasty has just been established, and its foundation is not stable yet. Many of the kings still have the idea of restoring the old system and calling themselves kings. I have no choice but to sit in the center and intimidate the world. Sigh. After absorbing the corpse jade, the Black Biao King's cultivation base improved. Just like Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian, he was already a 4-star king-level expert. This was the cultivation limit of the Star Continent. With the Black Biao King's strength, he could naturally reach the Starry Crescent Land through the spatial channel between the continents. However, in order to prevent the Starry Crescent Land from falling into chaos and reverting to the old system, the Black Biao King chose to stay and stabilize the foundation of the Dark Star Dynasty. Yi Xing patted the Black Biao King's arm and said, Brother Black Biao, with your strength, you can go to the Starry Crescent Land at any time. However, the Starry Crescent Land is a place where the 7 forces are fighting for supremacy. The demigods stand at the peak of the martial path, and the emperors roam the world. Brother Black Biao, you will not be as carefree as you are on the Starry Crescent Land. Qingxian and I are going to the Dark Star Continent, and the Starry Crescent Land is a place we must pass through. Moreover, I have a grudge against the Starry Crescent Land, so I have to go there. The Black Biao King said, It's lonely at the top. Once you and Qingxian leave, I will be invincible in the Starry Crescent Land. Haha. Yi Xing smiled and said, "If Brother Black Biao comes to the Starry Crescent land in the future, you can come to the Big Dipper Sword sect to look for me. If I am still on the Starry Crescent land, we might meet again in the future." Yi Xing took out the Big Dipper Sword sect's token that he had obtained when he represented the Big Dipper Sword sect in the Dark Star Godly Palace's disciple selection and handed it to the Black Biao King. He cupped his hands and said, "Brother Black Biao, farewell." The Black Biao King nodded and said, "Take care." "Farewell." Wei Qingxian nodded slightly towards the Black Tiger King, and together with Yi Xing, they headed towards the passage at the center of the spatial whirlpool. As soon as they entered the spatial vortex, a sharp aura rushed toward them. The void in the spatial vortex was extremely unstable, and some of the void currents were as sharp as blades. They were not inferior to the attacks of low-step kings. There were even some extremely powerful wind blades that were comparable to 4-star kings. If one did not have the strength of a peak 4-star king, entering the spatial vortex would mean certain death. However, such attacks were like tickles to Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian. They could not even break through their protective astral qi. The two of them flew through the spatial vortex at extreme speed without any obstructions. About 2 hours later, they finally reached the end of the spatial vortex. The spacious spatial vortex had finally shrunk to a point, and a powerful repulsive force squeezed Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian out. The two of them appeared in the sky. Yi Xing looked behind him, but there was no trace of the spatial vortex. The spatial vortex was nowhere to be found. Yi Xing opened his divine Voidbreaker eye and barely discovered the spatial vortex. Through the spatial vortex, he could vaguely see the scene on the other side of the spatial vortex. Yi Xing's divine Voidbreaker eye had only been cultivated to the first level. Even though he was passing through the spatial vortex, the scene he saw was still very blurry. The spatial vortex was extremely small, and the repulsive force was only outward, not inward. Even a quasi-god expert could not force his way in. It was no wonder that martial artists could only go from the Star Continent to the Starry Crescent land. If one wanted to enter the spatial vortex from the Star Continent, one would need to have the strength of a true god. Yi Xing looked down at the land below. It was also a vast desert. He used his divine Voidbreaker eye to observe the surroundings and quickly determined that this was the desert where the Dark Star Temple recruited disciples. Wei Qingxian looked around and felt the astral energy in the void. She said, "The astral energy of a mid-level continent is indeed much stronger than that of a low-level continent. In the Star Continent, our cultivation was suppressed, and we could not break through to the 5-star king level. But in the Starry Crescent land, we feel much more relaxed." Yi Xing smiled and nodded. His divine Voidbreaker eye continued to penetrate the void and look into the distance. Gradually, Yi Xing's expression changed. Yi Xing's gaze landed on the Big Dipper dynasty. In the past, the Big Dipper dynasty had a vast territory and was very powerful. However, the flags of the cities in the Big Dipper dynasty had changed. The Big Dipper dynasty's flag was completely gone. It had become the Astral Elephant dynasty's flag. This meant that the Big Dipper dynasty's cities had been occupied by the Astral Elephant dynasty. This made Yi Xing very angry. His divine Voidbreaker eye continued to penetrate forward. In the Big Dipper dynasty's territory, there was not only the Big Dipper dynasty's flag, but also the Dark-Een dynasty's and Demon Sealing dynasty's flags. There was no Big Dipper dynasty's flag. It was only when Yi Xing's gaze penetrated the Big Dipper Sword sect's capital that he finally saw the Big Dipper dynasty's flag. The Big Dipper Sword sect was left alone. Chapter 849. Noticing the change in Yi Xing's expression, Wei Qingxian asked, "Yi Xing, what's wrong?" Yi Xing looked away and said, "The Starry Crescent land has changed. Although I expected it, I did not expect it to happen so quickly. In just a few years, the Big Dipper dynasty has fallen apart, and the Big Dipper Sword clan is left with only one city. 6 years ago, when the Dark Star Temple was recruiting disciples on the Starry Crescent land, the Celestial Elephant Palace returned a second Nirvana quasi-god, Star Silver Death. He became the only second Nirvana quasi-god on the Starry Crescent land and broke the balance that had existed for tens of thousands of years. At that time, Yi Xing knew that the Starry Crescent land was going to change drastically. However, the Big Dipper Sword sect was a 4-star sect with tens of thousands of years of history. Yi Xing didn't expect the world to change so drastically in just 6 years. Even the Big Dipper city only had the inner city in the hands of the Big Dipper sword sect. The outer city had also fallen. In the outer city, Yi Xing saw 3 quasi-gods. They were Xing Qingji of the Star Elephant Palace, Feng Hao of the Demon Ceiling Valley, and Xian Yuan of the Dark Moon Palace. 6 years ago, when Yi Xing participated in the Dark Star Temple's disciple selection, he saw them. With Yi Xing's photographic memory, he naturally couldn't forget them. The Star Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Moon Palace all had quasi-gods guarding the outer city. There were also many Astral Sea Realm kings. It was clear that the Big Dipper Sword sect was surrounded. In the inner city, the 2 quasi-gods of the Big Dipper Sword sect, Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue, were guarding the sect. Their faces were filled with worry. Clearly, they were depressed about the Big Dipper Sword sect's current situation. Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Yin Palace had taken down the entire Big Dipper dynasty. Yi Xing guessed that it was because of the Big Dipper dynasty's tens of thousands of years of accumulated imperial karmic luck. Yi Xing had used the Big Dipper dynasty's name to get a spot in the Dark Star Temple's disciple selection. Moreover, he was Feng Xiaoxiao's best friend. If the Big Dipper Sword sect was in trouble, he couldn't ignore it. Yi Xing's expression was solemn as killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. Qingxian, let's head to the Big Dipper Sword sect first. Wei Qingxian nodded. Then, the 2 of them flew in the direction of the Big Dipper Sword sect. Along the way, Yi Xing continued to use his void-breaking god eyes to observe the situation of the other dynasties. The Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Moon Palace had already fought their way to the Big Dipper Sword sect's doorstep. Naturally, these 3 dynasties had nothing to worry about. Yi Xing's main focus was on the Golden Lion Dynasty, Giant Spirit Dynasty, and Moon Severing Dynasty. The Golden Lion Dynasty hadn't changed much, and the quasi-god Jin Hongqing hadn't returned to the Golden Lion sect. The Golden Lion sect didn't have a quasi-god overseeing it, but it hadn't been attacked by Celestial Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, Dark Moon Palace, or any other forces. There could only be one result. The Golden Lion sect had sided with these 3 forces. When Yi Xing observed the Giant Spirit Dynasty, he confirmed this point. Jin Hongqing was attacking the Giant Spirit Dynasty with the help of Celestial Elephant Palace and Demon Ceiling Valley. Like the Big Dipper Sword sect, the Giant Spirit Dynasty only existed in name. Only the inner city of the royal capital was still under their control. At this moment, the 2 Nirvana quasi-god of Celestial Elephant Palace, Star Silver Death, and the quasi-god of Demon Ceiling Valley, Feng Nongying, were leading many kings to attack the inner city of the Giant Spirit Dynasty. The quasi-god of the Giant Spirit Dynasty, Lu Zhanghong, was controlling the dragon providence of the Giant Spirit Dynasty. He was fighting against the 3 quasi-gods, Star Silver Death, Feng Nongying, and Jin Hongqing. The dragon luck of the Giant Spirit Dynasty was a giant blue dragon that was thousands of feet long. It occupied the sky above the inner city of the Giant Spirit Dynasty, and was very powerful. It wasn't at a disadvantage against Star Silver Death and Feng Nongying. However, the dragon luck of the dynasty wasn't endless. The Giant Spirit Dynasty only existed in name and had lost its source of dragon luck. Star Silver Death, Feng Nongying, and Jin Hongqing couldn't break through the dragon luck of the Giant Spirit Dynasty, but their goal was to exhaust it. When the dragon luck of the Giant Spirit Dynasty was exhausted to a certain extent and its power weakened, they could break through and destroy the Giant Spirit sect in one fell swoop. However, the dragon luck of the dynasty had been accumulating for tens of thousands of years and was extremely abundant. It probably couldn't be exhausted in a short time. The Moon Beheading Dynasty situation was the same as the Big Dipper Sword sects. They only had the inner city of the royal capital left. The quasi-god of Celestial Elephant Palace, Xingyuehong, and the quasi-god of Demon Ceiling Valley, Feng Shaoyuan, were guarding the inner city. The Moon Beheading sect couldn't even take care of itself. All in all, the 7 forces of the Starry Crescent land were now divided into 2 camps. On one side were the Celestial Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, Dark Moon Palace, and Golden Lion sect. On the other side were the Big Dipper Sword sect, Giant Spirit sect, and Moon Severing sect. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for the Big Dipper Sword sect, Giant Spirit sect, and Moon Severing sect. The other 4 forces' strategy was to first besiege the Big Dipper Sword sect and Moon Severing sect, then attack the giant spirit sect with all their strength. Even the dynasty forces of the Starry Crescent Land would take about 100 years to exhaust their dragon luck. The 7 dynasties of the Starry Crescent Land were all stronger than the dynasties of the Starry Crescent Land and had existed for a longer time. The dragon luck they had accumulated would definitely be more abundant. Naturally, it would take a longer time for the dragon luck to dissipate. It might take more than 100 years or even 200 years for the giant spirit dynasty's dragon luck to dissipate. However, if someone could resist the power of the dragon luck and keep attacking, the dragon luck would be exhausted at a rate 10 times faster than it would dissipate naturally. The dragon luck that would normally take 1 or 200 years to dissipate might dissipate in 10 or 20 years. The 7 forces of the Starry Crescent Land all had warriors cultivating in the Dark Star Godly Palace. Every 100 years, someone would come back from the Dark Star Godly Palace. Obviously, Star Silver Death and the others didn't want the war to drag on for too long. They wanted to destroy the Big Dipper Sword Sect, Moon Severing Sect, and Giant Spirit Sect within 100 years. Then, after 100 years, even if the 3 sects had incredible geniuses who came back from the Dark Star Godly Palace, they wouldn't be able to turn the situation around without a foundation. If things went according to plan, the Big Dipper Sword Sect, Moon Severing Sect, and Giant Spirit Sect would probably be destroyed within 100 years. However, with the unexpected appearance of Yi Xing, the result was uncertain. Big Dipper Sword Sect. Great Emperor Vast Sky was cultivating in a treasured land filled with astral power. Although the astral power here was abundant and beneficial to the cultivation of the dynasty, it was of little use to a 9-star king. However, the Big Dipper Sword Sect was in danger. Great Emperor Vast Sky wanted to break through to the Star Nirvana realm and become a quasi-god. There was no treasured land in the Big Dipper Sword Sect that could help people break through to the quasi-god realm. Therefore, he could only cultivate in a place filled with astral power. Suddenly, Great Emperor Vast Sky sensed a message from his communication bead. He stopped cultivating and took out his communication bead to check. His face immediately turned to shock. It was a message from Yi Xing, Sect Master Feng. Junior Yi Xing has come from the Dark Star Godly Palace to help the Big Dipper Sword Sect out of this predicament. Sect Master, please inform Senior Han Qiu and Senior Jun Yu to meet me in the south of the city. Chapter 850. Vast Heaven Emperor was stunned for a full breath before he came back to his senses. For a 9-star king, it was considered a long time for him to attack 10 to 20 times in a breath. Vast Heaven Emperor was shocked by Yi Xing's message. After becoming a disciple of the Dark Star Temple, the warriors of the Starry Crescent Land had never returned to the Starry Crescent Land in advance. Only every 100 years, when the Dark Star Temple recruited new disciples, could they pass through the space passage and return to the Starry Crescent Land. However, it had only been 6 years since the last time the Dark Star Holy Palace recruited disciples. Yi Xing had returned from the Dark Star Holy Palace? How was that possible? Vast Heaven Emperor could not help but be shocked. It was too unbelievable. Only true gods could travel between the Starry Crescent Land. Even quasi-gods had to use the void-crossing divine boat. However, the cost of using the void-crossing divine boat to travel between the Starry Crescent Land was shocking. It was no less than the lifetime wealth of an ordinary quasi-god. Yi Xing's arrival on the Dark Star continent had either been personally escorted by a true god expert or a quasi-god expert using a void-crossing divine boat. Regardless of which method it was, Great Emperor Vast Heaven found it hard to believe. Vast Heaven Emperor was once an outer disciple of the Dark Star Holy Palace. He naturally knew how high a true god was and how precious a void-crossing divine boat was. Therefore, Great Monarch Vast Heaven was shocked when he saw Yi Xing's message. After the shock, he began to doubt the authenticity of the message. After a while, Vast Heaven Emperor's communication pearl sent another message. Sect Leader Feng, I was chosen by a true god elder in the Dark Star Holy Palace and was accepted as a disciple. My master knew that the Big Dipper Sword Sect was in trouble and sent me here to help the Big Dipper Sword Sect. When Yi Xing saw that Vast Heaven Emperor did not reply, he knew that he was already a disciple of the Dark Star Holy Palace. He should have been in the Dark Star Land. His sudden appearance in the Starry Crescent Land was indeed shocking. It was reasonable for Vast Heaven Emperor to be suspicious. Therefore, Yi Xing immediately sent another message. Although Yi Xing was a 4-star king, he could not be compared to a quasi-god. He could not change the situation of the Starry Crescent Land with his own strength. In order to quickly solve the Big Dipper sword sect's predicament, the only way was to use the Heavenly Bow continent's legendary weapon. Yi Xing's appearance in the Starry Crescent land was already shocking enough, and now he had a divine artifact? That was even more shocking. Yi Xing couldn't explain everything one by one, but if he could fabricate a true divinity powerhouse as his master, then everything would make sense. Emperor Vast Sky was excited when he received Yi Xing's message for the second time. Although he was still doubtful, Yi Xing's explanation was reasonable enough to convince him. Emperor Vast Heaven immediately reported the news to Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue were equally shocked and overjoyed. If what Yi Xing said was true, then the Big Dipper sword sect would be saved. Feng Hanqiu immediately made a decision and said, Junyue, you will fight your way out of the city with me and deal with Xing Qingji, Feng Hao, and Xian Yuan. Kuang Tian, you will seize the opportunity and go to the south of the city to assist Yi Xing. Big Dipper City, East City. Suddenly, the void ruptured, and Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue, two first Nirvana quasi-gods, emerged from the void. They each took out a divine artifact and charged toward the martial artists of Xianxia Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Yin Palace. Ha! After a few wild laughs, the void ruptured in front of Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue, and three quasi-gods appeared at the same time. They were Xing Qingji, Feng Hao, and Xian Yuan. Quasi-gods were able to travel through the void. As quasi-gods they could sense it. The moment Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue traveled through the void, Xing Qingji and the other two sensed it and immediately intercepted them. Xing Qingji laughed and said, Old Ghost Hanqiu? You want to go to Giant Holy City to help? Haha. No way. Around the Big Dipper City, there was already a reverse teleportation formation. The teleportation formation could not send people out. That was why Xing Qingji, Feng Hao, and Xian Yuan could bring people to surround the Big Dipper City. Xing Qingji and the other two also took out their divine artifacts at the same time and blocked Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue's attacks. 3 against 2 they had the upper hand. However, the three misjudged Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue's intentions. They thought that Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue wanted to break out of the encirclement and go to Giant Holy City to help. They did not know that Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue were only trying to attract the attention of the three so that Vast Heaven Great Emperor could go to the south of the city to help Yi Xing. As soon as the battle in the east of the city began, Vast Heaven Great Emperor sent a message to Yi Xing and then led people to charge out of the south of the city. The martial artists that Vast Heaven Great Emperor led were all high-level martial emperors. They were all inner elders of the Big Dipper sword sect. The moment they charged out of the south of the city, they were like a sharp knife that pierced through the blockade formed by the martial artists of Xianxia Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Yin Palace. Feng Guangtian, how dare you leave Big Dipper City? You're digging your own grave. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. A person yelled. It was a 9-star Great Emperor. Xianxia Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Yin Palace each had a 9-star Great Emperor. They surrounded Big Dipper City. The anti-teleportation formation they had set up was only targeted at the Big Dipper sword sect. Their own teleportation formations were unaffected. Teleportation formations were set up all around Big Dipper City. The martial artists of the three major sects could appear anywhere around Big Dipper City in the shortest time possible. Following that, 2 more loud laughs could be heard. The other 9-star Great Sovereign had also arrived. Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian were hiding outside the south of the city. After receiving Vast Heaven Great Emperor's message, they began to sneak into the city. When they saw that the battle had started, they avoided the area where everyone was fighting and rushed into the inner city. Who's there? A loud yell came from the front. A 7-star Great Emperor flew into the sky and blocked Yi Xing and Wei Qingshuan's path. This person was wearing Xianxia Palace's uniform. He should be an inner elder of Xianxia Palace. Kill! Yi Xing yelled coldly. Naturally, he would kill anyone from Xianxia Palace without mercy. Wei Qingxian immediately activated her icy star form and struck out with her palm. Extreme cold chi spread forward like a gale. You're courting death. The 7-star Great Emperor was enraged when he saw that 2 4-star Great Emperors dared to attack him. With a yell, he threw a punch at Wei Qingxian. The fist and palm collided. There was a loud explosion and energy splattered everywhere. The seven-star Great Emperor's expression changed abruptly. The power of the cold chi palm was not weaker than his. What was more terrifying was that the cold chi was like a maggot attached to the bone. It immediately spread to his body through the fist and made him shudder involuntarily. He felt as if the blood in his body had frozen. His body was so cold that he could not keep up with his thoughts. Wuxia Yixing's arrow intent was attached to his body. He shuttled through the void and instantly appeared in front of the seven-star Great Emperor. He pointed his finger and an arrow shot out. Affected by the cold chi, the seven-star Great Emperor's reaction was greatly slowed. He could only watch as the finger shot towards his head. With a bang, his head exploded. The seven-star Great Emperor died instantly. Chapter 851. With Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian working together, killing a seven-star king was as easy as flipping their hands. It only took them a blink of an eye. Then, without slowing down, the two continued to rush toward the inner city at a speed of 100 miles per breath. The three quasi-gods from Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Moon Palace were held back by Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue. Most of the high-level kings were also attracted by Emperor Vast Sky's team. Therefore, the defense in other areas was naturally weak. The area where Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian were was actually guarded by a team of Astral Elephant Palace's kings. The seven-star king was the leader of the team. The other kings were focused on the battle in the distance and didn't react in time. The seven-star king was the first to intercept, but he was instantly killed by Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian. The other kings didn't dare to stop them and fled in fear, hurriedly reporting to Nine-Star Emperor. When they finished reporting, Nine-Star Emperor received the news. In a few breaths' time, Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian had already flown a few hundred miles and reached the edge of the inner city. Yi Xing and Emperor Vast Sky had been in contact. Although Emperor Vast Sky was fighting with the Nine-Star Emperor, he had sent a team to meet up with Yi Xing. The two sides had already met up, and Emperor Vast Sky brought Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian into the inner city. Retreat! Emperor Vast Sky ordered. Their goal just now was to attract the attention of the other martial artists. In reality, they hadn't gone too far from the inner city. Now that they were retreating, they quickly retreated into the inner city. The kings from Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Moon Palace chased to the edge of the inner city but didn't dare to continue. The inner city had a large number of completed level 5 arrays and even incomplete level 6 arrays. Even a first Nirvana quasi-god would be in great trouble if they were caught in them. After the kings retreated into the inner city, Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue also retreated. Although the other three quasi-gods had the upper hand, they couldn't stop Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue. They could only watch as the two retreated into the inner city. You want to help the giant spirit sect? Haha. In your dreams. Watching Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue disappear, Xing Qingji laughed loudly. At this point, he thought that the Big Dipper Sword sect wanted to break out of the encirclement to reinforce the Great Spirit sect and beat back the Big Dipper Sword sect's martial practitioners. Big Dipper Sword sect, Main Hall. Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian were brought here by the Big Dipper Sword sect. Soon, Emperor Vast Heaven, Feng Hanqiu, and Feng Junyue, two quasi-gods, arrived. There were also more than 10 peerless emperors. Without exception, when they looked at Yi Xing, they were both shocked and pleasantly surprised. Yi Xing cupped his fists and greeted everyone. Senior Han Qiu, Senior Jun Yu, Sect Master Feng, Elders. Emperor Vast Heaven looked at Yi Xing and said, Yi Xing, have you really been accepted as a disciple by a true god elder? Only then did Emperor Vast Heaven notice Wei Qingxian and ask, who is this? Yi Xing nodded and said, this is my partner, Wei Qingxian. After Wei Qingxian and Emperor Vast Heaven greeted each other, Yi Xing continued, if I hadn't been accepted as a disciple by a true god elder, why would I have returned to the Starry Crescent Land? Master sent me back to the Starry Crescent Land because he thought I was a disciple of the Big Dipper Sword sect and wanted me to come back to help my old sect. Secondly, it was also a training for me. He wanted me to cultivate in the Starry Crescent Land so that I could return to the Dark Star continent with my own strength in the future. Although Yi Xing's explanation had a loophole, which was that he couldn't explain why Wei Qingxian had come to the Starry Crescent Land with Yi Xing, Everyone was concerned about the safety of the Big Dipper sword sect and didn't think too much about the truth of Yixing's words. Quasi-god Feng Hanqiu was the most anxious about the safety of the Big Dipper sword sect, so he urgently asked, "Now, how can we help our sect get out of this predicament?" Yixing smiled and said, "Master told me to bring some treasures. Senior Hanqiu, with these treasures, even if we can't counterattack Xianxia Palace or Demon Ceiling Valley, we should have no problem restoring the Big Dipper dynasty." The eyes of Emperor Vast Heaven, Feng Hanqiu, Feng Junyue, and the others all brightened. Feng Hanqiu said, "Yixing, you are now a disciple of the Dark Star God Palace and a disciple of a true God expert. You must not call us senior anymore. Just call us senior. What treasures have you brought?" "Okay, senior brother Hanqiu." Yixing nodded and raised his hands. A sword appeared in each of his hands. The moment the swords appeared, their powerful auras made all the martial artists' eyes widen. The two quasi-gods, Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue, looked at the two swords with bright eyes and cried out in surprise, "Middle-quality divine weapons?" Divine weapons were offensive tools among divine weapons. They were divided into low-quality, middle-quality, high-quality, and supreme quality. Divine weapons were noble, and each grade made a huge difference in power and value. The majority of quasi-gods used low-quality divine weapons. Only powerful quasi-gods at the 4 Nirvana level or higher could easily obtain middle-quality divine weapons. As for high-quality divine weapons, very few quasi-gods possessed them. They were treasures that only true gods possessed. As for supreme-quality divine weapons, they were treasures that even true gods rarely possessed. The 7 factions of the Starry Crescent continent had existed for tens of thousands of years, and they all possessed divine weapons. However, they were the most ordinary low-quality divine weapons. There wasn't a single middle-quality divine weapon. The value of a middle-quality divine weapon wasn't something that a quasi-god who had just entered the Star Nirvana realm could afford. But now, Yixing had taken out middle-quality divine weapons, and 2 of them at once. How could Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue not be shocked? That's right. Middle-quality divine weapons. Yixing nodded and handed the sword in his right hand to Feng Hanqiu. This is the sun-chasing star sword. Its specialty is its speed. It's suitable for senior brother Hanqiu. Then, Yixing handed the sword in his left hand to Feng Junyue. This is the sky-shaking sword. Its specialty is its strength. It's suitable for senior brother Junyue. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue took the swords from Yixing excitedly. Are these really for us? The 2 of them found it hard to believe. They were once core disciples of the Dark Star Temple, so they naturally knew how precious middle-quality divine weapons were. They weren't something that ordinary quasi-gods could possess. Even low-quality divine weapons were extremely precious to first Nirvana quasi-gods, let alone middle-quality divine weapons. The Big Dipper sword sect would produce a quasi-god every 1,000 years or so. For tens of thousands of years, there were dozens of quasi-gods. However, only 3 of them brought back divine weapons from the Dark Star Temple. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue didn't bring back any divine weapons from the Dark Star Temple. The divine weapons they used were left behind by the predecessors of the Big Dipper sword sect. Although middle-quality divine weapons were precious, Yixing had many of them. Moreover, sword-type weapons weren't suitable for him. When he became a 9-star king, he could enter the Heavenly Bao continent and obtain all of Luo Tiangong's treasures. He could also enter the Star Secret Realm and obtain the inheritance of Star Supremacy. To Yixing, middle-quality divine weapons weren't too precious. He didn't mind giving them away. Chapter 852. Yixing said, "Of course it's for you too. Middle-grade divine weapons are precious, but they're nothing to my master. You don't have to be so polite." The 2 were overjoyed. Feng Hanqiu said, Good. With this sun-chasing star sword, Star Silver Death has nothing to fear. This old man will be able to compete with him. I no longer need to rely on the dynasty's draconic luck to guard this small place." Feng Junyue nodded. "With me, even if Star Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, Dark Moon Palace, and Golden Lion Sect join forces, our Big Dipper sword sect can fight them." "Haha. Senior brother Hanqiu, what are we waiting for? Let's go straight to Star Elephant Palace and the Great Spirit Sex crisis will be resolved. The two were in a good mood and laughed excitedly. They looked at each other and bowed to Yi Xing. Thank you, junior brother Yi Xing. Thank you, your master. Yi Xing laughed. The difference in strength between quasi-gods is greater than that between kings. Star Silver Death is a second Nirvana quasi-god and won't be easy to deal with just one middle-grade divine weapon. However, with two middle-grade divine weapons and the two of you working together, Star Silver Death will be defeated. Feng Hanqiu thought for a moment and nodded. That's right. Now that the Great Spirit Sect is being attacked by Star Silver Death and the others, we couldn't save them even if we wanted to. Now that we have the strength, we should go and save them immediately. Big Dipper City, East City. The void split open, and the two quasi-gods, Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue, walked out. Their quasi-god auras exploded, and their power was earth-shattering. Air waves rolled in the sky and clouds surged like the sea. The three quasi-gods, Xianxia, Feng Hao, and Xian Yuan, immediately traveled through the void and appeared in front of Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue. At this time, the three of them already knew that two four-star kings had rushed into the inner city during the previous battle. However, the three of them didn't care. They were just two four-star kings. Even if they were stronger than a seven-star king, they wouldn't care. Looking at Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue, Xianxia laughed. Old farts, what tricks are you up to? In short, you're dreaming if you want to rescue the Great Spirit Sect. Feng Hao was a few hundred years younger than Xianxia, so he looked much younger. However, his face was also filled with a sinister smile. Hee. After the giant spirit sect is destroyed, it will be your Big Dipper Sword Sect's turn. Feng Hanqiu snorted coldly and said, Xianxia, your good days are over. Go to hell. As he spoke, Feng Hanqiu formed a sword seal and summoned the sun-chasing star sword. Whoosh! A dazzling sword light appeared out of nowhere. This sword light seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth, revealing a vast divine might that made people not dare to look at it directly. Xianxia, Feng Hao, and Xian Yuan's expressions changed drastically as they exclaimed, Mid-grade divine weapon. Feng Hanqiu said coldly, That's right. It's a middle-grade divine artifact, the heaven-shaking gale sword art. Kill. Whoosh! Following Feng Hanqiu's sword seal, the sun-chasing star sword swept out like a gale. Sword light swept out, attacking Xianxia layer after layer. Xianxia's expression changed drastically. He had exchanged blows with Feng Hanqiu several times, and their strength was on par. However, Feng Hanqiu, who was using a middle-grade divine artifact, was currently bursting with power that made his heart palpitate. He felt as if he was facing Xing Silver Death. Xianxia shouted, Lend me a hand. As he spoke, Xianxia also summoned a divine artifact. It was a golden square seal called the Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal. The Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal bloomed with dazzling golden light. It grew to the size of a mountain and soared into the sky. Bang 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 bang. The sword light from the sun-chasing star sword struck the Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal layer after layer, constantly producing loud noises. In the blink of an eye, countless exchanges had occurred. The dazzling golden light of the Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal suddenly dimmed. Xianxia was sweating profusely. The Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal trembled in the sky. It was extremely strenuous to withstand Feng Hanqiu's attacks. At this moment, Feng Hao and Xian Yuan attacked at the same time. Demon Sealing God Destroying Seal. Wind Ghost Sword Technique. The two of them shouted at the same time. Feng Hao wore a pair of low-grade divine artifact gloves. In the blink of an eye, he formed hundreds of hand seals. The layers of hand seals were extremely complex. As for Xian Yuan, he summoned a low-grade divine artifact sword. In an instant, a chilly wind blew in the sky. There were faint cries of ghosts and howls of wolves. The Demon Sealing God Destroying Seal and the Wind Ghost Sword Technique, the two divine artifacts on the left and right of the Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal, attacked the layers of sword light at the same time. The trembling Vajra Heaven Suppressing Seal immediately stabilized. Feng Hao and Xian Yuan blocked most of the attack power of the sun-chasing star sword. Xianxia's situation immediately improved. He let out a long sigh of relief. Although Feng Hanqiu's strength had greatly increased due to the sun-chasing star sword, He could not gain the upper hand in a head-on fight with 3 quasi-gods. However, the sun-chasing star sword's specialty was its speed, not its strength. It could not unleash its true power in a head-on fight with the enemy.
Feng Hanqiu smiled.
The sword technique in his hand changed and he shouted, "Go!" Swish! The sword light that filled the sky suddenly condensed at one point. The sun-chasing star sword appeared. It only appeared for a moment before it turned into a stream of light and disappeared. The sun-chasing star sword did not disappear. It was just that its speed was so fast that it caused one to be unable to see clearly. The sword light circled in the air. In the blink of an eye, it bypassed the Vajra heaven-suppressing seal, Feng Hao, and Xianyuan's attacks and stabbed at Xianxia. Xianxia's hair stood on end. He sensed a terrifying danger and was greatly shocked. "Return!" Xianxia shouted. The Vajra heaven-suppressing seal, which was as big as a mountain, flew back to Xianxia like a meteor. In the blink of an eye, it returned to Xianxia and shrunk to the size of a wash basin, barely blocking the attack of the sun-chasing star sword. The shrunken Vajra heaven-suppressing seal was much weaker. Bang! With a loud explosion, the Vajra heaven-suppressing seal was knocked back by the sword and crashed into Xianxia's body.
Xianxia's chest caved in.
He spat out a mouthful of blood and his body shot backward.
"Seal!" Feng Hao shouted.
The collision between the sun-chasing star sword and the Vajra heaven-suppressing seal stopped. Feng Hao immediately seized the opportunity and slapped out a set of hand seals.
Demon Sealing God-Destroying Seal. Demon Sealing Seal sealed. God-Destroying Seal attacked.
Feng Hao used all his strength to perform the Demon Sealing Seal.
Seals covered the sun-chasing star sword.
Feng Hanqiu performed the sky-sweeping gale sword technique and used all his strength to drive the sun-chasing star sword.
The sun-chasing star sword trembled.
Even though it was a middle-grade divine weapon, it could not break free for a while.
This showed how strong the sealing power of the Demon Sealing Seal was. Xianyuan was overjoyed. He formed a sword technique and pointed at Feng Hanqiu.
He shouted, "Die!"
A cold wind blew.
The low-grade divine sword in the sky flashed with a bright light. While the sun-chasing star sword was being sealed by the Demon Sealing Seal, it attacked Feng Hanqiu.
Hee.
At this moment, Feng Junue, who had not made a move, laughed. He suddenly formed a sword technique and shouted, "Heavenly Dragon Mountain Suppressing Sword Technique." Whoosh! A sword light appeared out of nowhere, bringing with it a vigorous aura. This sword light was like a mountain with heavenly dragons dancing in it. It was extremely powerful. It fell from the sky and slashed at the low-grade divine sword that Xianyuan had used. With a crisp sound, the low-grade divine sword was sent flying into the distance. Xianyuan's body swayed and he spat out a mouthful of blood.
Another middle-grade divine weapon? Xianyuan screamed in horror. Chapter 853.
Feng Hanqiu's strength was close to Xianxia, Feng Hao, and Xianyuan's. However, with a middle-grade divine weapon, his strength had reached a level where even the 3 of them were at a disadvantage. Now, Feng Junue had also taken out a middle-grade divine weapon.
Xianxia, Feng Hao, and Xianyuan were all shocked and terrified.
They were shocked because the Big Dipper Sword sect did not have any middle-grade divine weapons, and Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue had never used one before. How did they both have a middle-grade divine weapon all of a sudden? Middle-grade divine weapons were not cabbages. In the Starry Crescent land, they were supreme treasures, the strongest divine weapons that had never appeared before.
Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue both had such treasures. It was so strange that Xianxia and the other 2 could not believe it.
In a flash, the 3 of them recalled the news that their subordinates had reported. 2 4-star kings had broken through the blockade and entered the inner city. The Big Dipper Sword sect did not have any middle-grade divine weapons. Now that 2 4-star kings had entered the sect, Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue each had one. At this moment, Xianxia and the other 2 understood that the 2 middle-grade divine weapons must be related to the 2 4-star kings.
Xianxia and the other 2 immediately regretted it.
If they had known that 2 4-star kings had entered the sect with middle-grade divine weapons, they would not have fought with Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue. They would have killed the 2 4-star kings directly and snatched the 2 middle-grade divine weapons. Under a strong attack, The Big Dipper Sword Sect's dynasty luck would be exhausted in less than 3 to 5 years, and they would be completely annihilated.
It was too late to say anything now.
If Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue only had one middle-grade divine weapon, they would still dare to fight. However, with 2 divine weapons, their lives would be threatened. How would they dare to fight? Junior brother Hao, junior brother Yuan, retreat. Xianxia, who was spurting blood from his own Vajra heaven-suppressing seal, yelled. Then, he turned into a beam of light and fled. His speed was so fast that he could travel at least 600 miles in one breath. Although Xianxia reminded them verbally, Feng Hao and Xian Yuan knew that they had to retreat. What they needed was not Xianxia's verbal reminder, but Xianxia's practical help. Once Xianxia fled, they could only face Feng Juanyue's heavenly dragon mountain-suppressing sword art head-on. The heaven-shaking mighty divine sword sent Xian Yuan's low-ranked divine sword flying. Its momentum was like a rainbow, and it did not diminish in the slightest. In the blink of an eye, it slashed in front of Xian Yuan. Xian Yuan's face was filled with horror as he retreated rapidly. At the same time, he formed a defensive sword seal and activated a dense protective sword aura. In a hurry, how could he defend against the terrifying power of the mighty heaven-shaking sword? Boom! With a loud explosion, Xian Yuan's protective sword aura was completely dispersed. His body shot backwards like a cannonball, and blood sprayed out in a long line. Xian Yuan's body was like a parched earth. Large amounts of cracks appeared on his body. They were all caused by the sword qi. One of the main sword scars was deep and long. Even his divine bones were broken. Large amounts of his internal organs were crushed. However, quasi-gods had immortal bodies. As long as their divine bodies were not completely crushed in an instant, it was not a fatal injury. They only needed to consume their life force to quickly recover. Xian Yuan used the force of this attack to escape. His flesh wriggled, and his damaged body was quickly repaired. In the blink of an eye, he was back to normal. The moment Xian Yuan was injured, the chasing Sun Star Sword also penetrated the seal of the demon sealing seal. At this moment, Feng Hao was also turning to flee. His speed was not inferior to Xianxia and Xian Yuan's. However, the chasing Sun Star Sword was faster than Feng Hao. Like a beam of light, it caught up with Feng Hao in the blink of an eye. It pierced through the back of Feng Hao's head and pierced it into pieces. Even though his head was gone, Feng Hao's speed did not decrease. He fled 600 miles in one breath. His flesh wriggled, and his head grew back in the blink of an eye. Quasi-gods were extremely fast, and it was not easy to catch up with them. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue did not chase after Xianxia and the other two. Instead, they looked at each other and made a decision. Boom! Feng Junyue wielded the heaven-shaking mighty sword and performed the heavenly dragon mountain suppression sword technique. The mountain-like sword force carried a terrifying attack power and attacked the martial artists of Xingxiang Palace, Demon Sealing Valley, and Dark Yin Palace. The speed of a king was much slower than that of a quasi-god. Xianxia and the other two escaped, but the kings of the three forces were not that fast. When they saw Xianxia and the other two escaping, it was too late for them to escape. The heaven-shaking mighty sword was unstoppable. The anti-teleportation formation was instantly destroyed, and a large number of kings were killed. Feng Hanqiu instantly traveled through the void and appeared at another location outside Big Dipper City. A large number of kings of the three forces were gathered here. Once the chasing Sun Star Sword was used, it was naturally an easy massacre. Kill! At this moment, Great Emperor Vast Sky also led the martial artists of Big Dipper Sword sect out of the inner city. The martial artists of Xingxiang Palace and the other two forces were completely defeated. In this battle, other than Xianxia, Feng Hao, and Xian Yuan, the three quasi-gods, only a small number of kings escaped through the teleportation formation. The rest all died in Big Dipper City. Giant Holy City. Star Silver Death and the others were resting in the outer city to recover their strength. The Giant Holy Sect no longer had a source of Imperial Dragon luck. They could not replenish it, so there was no need to keep attacking. Suddenly, Star Silver Death and Feng Nongying's communication pearls received a message, and it started to vibrate violently. Obviously, someone had sent an extremely important message using a special communication method. Both of them were surprised. Now the dynasties of Big Dipper Sword Sect, Giant Holy Sect, and Moon Severing Sect had all been destroyed. Only the three major sects could only rely on their Imperial Dragon luck to defend their territory in the inner city of the imperial capital. It was only a matter of time before the three major sects were destroyed. What else could be so urgent? Star Silver Death and Feng Nongying took out their communication pearls. Then, their expressions changed at the same time, revealing shock. Feng Nongying looked at Star Silver Death and said, "Brother Yin, you received the message too?" Star Silver Death nodded and said in shock, "The Big Dipper Sword Sect has a middle-grade divine weapon, and Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue each have one. How is this possible?" Feng Nongying said in shock, "Yes. Middle-grade divine weapons are so precious. Even in the Dark Star Temple, only senior brothers who are quasi-gods of the fourth nirvana and above have one. Very few junior quasi-gods have one. How could the Big Dipper Sword Sect have a middle-grade divine weapon?" The two looked at each other in disbelief. However, since Xianxia and Feng Hao had sent this message, it could not be fake. Star Silver Death immediately stood up and said, "Let's put the attack on the Giant Holy Sect aside for now. Let's go to the Big Dipper Sword Sect and have a look. Middle-grade divine weapon is not something that Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue are qualified to have." Humph. The two immediately notified Jin Hongqing and left the Giant Holy City with the kings of Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Golden Lion Sect. In the Giant Holy City, quasi-god Lu Zhenghong sensed that Star Silver Death and the others had left. He was slightly surprised. They had besieged the Giant Holy City and attacked for more than a year. It was strange that they would suddenly leave. Chapter 854. Not long after Star Silver Death left Giant Spirit City, he received another message from Xing Qingji. Star Silver Death was furious when he saw that Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue were leading the experts of the Big Dipper Sword Sect to the Astral Dynasty. The Big Dipper Sword Sect's goal was obvious. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that the quasi-gods of the Celestial Elephant Palace were outside to attack the royal capital and destroy the Dragon Luck. The Imperial Dragon Luck was the foundation of the sect. Once the sect was in trouble, the Imperial Dragon Luck could protect them for 1 to 200 years. The Big Dipper Sword Sect wanted to destroy the Celestial Elephant Palace's foundation. How could Star Silver Death not be angry? Star Silver Death immediately sent a message to Xingyue Hong, who was besieging the Moon Severing Sect, asking him to return to his sect and deal with the Big Dipper Sword Sect's invasion. Feng Nongying also sent a message to Feng Shaoyuan, asking him to bring the Demon Ceiling Valley's martial artists to the Astral Elephant Palace as reinforcements. The Big Dipper Sword Sect went straight for the capital of the Celestial Elephant Palace. They adopted the method of besieging the way to rescue the Zhao, and resolved the crisis of the Giant Spirit Sect and the Moon Severing Sect in an instant. After the martial practitioners of Astral Elephant Palace and Demon Ceiling Valley retreated, quasi-god Lu Zhenghong of the Giant Spirit Sect and quasi-god Qiu Minjun of the Moon Severing Sect also received messages from the Big Dipper Sword Sect. When Lu Zhenghong and Qiu Minjun found out that Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue possessed middle-grade divine weapons, they were both surprised and overjoyed. They finally understood why the Astral Elephant Palace and Demon Ceiling Valley retreated. Immediately, the two of them left the sect and headed to Astral Elephant Palace. The Astral Dynasty had existed for even longer than the Beidou Dynasty. Naturally, its draconic luck was abundant. Destroying it was not an easy task, and it could not be done in a short period of time. Therefore, although Star Silver Death was furious, he was not in a hurry. He waited until he met up with Xing Qingji, Xingyue Hong, and the other quasi-gods before returning to the capital of the Celestial Dynasty. At this time, Lu Zhenghong and Qiu Minjun had already joined up with the Big Dipper Sword Sect's cultivators. Senior brother Han Qiu, junior brother Junyue. Lu Zhenghong and Qiu Minjun could see from afar that Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue were both controlling a mid-rank godly sword and attacking the array formation in the inner city. Middle-grade divine swords were terrifyingly powerful, allowing Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue's attacks to reach the level of second nirvana quasi-gods. Level 5 arrays couldn't stop them at all and were all destroyed. Even some level 6 arrays were on the verge of collapse. Even the Celestial Elephant Sect's Wang Dynasty Dragon Luck, although already awakened, did not have the control of a quasi-god. Under the control of the Celestial Elephant Sect's master, the 10,000 Elephant Emperor, The Celestial Elephant sect could only parry and not fight back. However, the royal dynasty's luck was extremely dense. Even with a 9-star king controlling it, the consumption of luck was several times faster than that of a quasi-god. It would still take a lot of time to completely destroy it. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue stopped attacking. Soon, Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun arrived in front of them. Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun's gazes landed on the middle-grade divine weapons of Feng Hanqiu and Qiu Minjun. Lu Zhanghong's voice shook as he said, "It's really a middle-grade divine weapon. Senior brother Hanqiu, what's going on? How come you have a middle-grade divine weapon?" Lu Zhanghong was indeed shocked. He wasn't that much older than Feng Hanqiu. In the past, whenever he saw Feng Hanqiu, he would call him Old Devil Hanqiu. But now, with a middle-grade divine weapon in hand, Lu Zhanghong felt a huge pressure and treated Feng Hanqiu seriously. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue were both elated. They were in a good mood. Feng Hanqiu chuckled and said, "This is the great fortune of the Big Dipper Sword sect. Haha. Do you still remember Yi Xing who participated in the competition under the name of the Big Dipper Sword sect when the Dark Star Divine Palace recruited disciples 6 years ago?" Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun nodded at the same time. Lu Zhanghong said, "Of course. He defeated numerous kings with his cultivation base of 9th-level astral-reaching realm and was the champion of the competition. Senior brother Hanqiu, what does he have to do with this?" Feng Hanqiu's joy deepened as he said, "Junior brother Yi Xing is a genius. He was chosen by a true god elder in the Dark Star Godly Palace and was accepted as a disciple. True god experts can travel through different space continents and know about the changes in the Starry Crescent Land. Thus, they sent junior brother Yi Xing back to the Starry Crescent Land to solve the Big Dipper Sword sect's crisis." Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun were dumbfounded. Middle-grade divine weapon was already shocking enough, but it actually involved a true god expert? Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun had also cultivated in the Dark Star Godly Palace when they were young. From outer disciple to inner disciple, they eventually became core disciple. Only after exhausting their potential did they return to the Starry Crescent Land. Naturally, they knew how high a true god expert was in the Dark Star Godly Palace. Qiu Minjun said joyfully, "Such a good thing. Congratulations. You've only been in the Dark Star Godly Palace for a few years, and you've already been accepted as a disciple by a true god elder. Such a thing is extremely rare in the Dark Star Godly Palace." It's the first time for a disciple of the Starry Crescent Land. While Yu Minjun was speaking, Lu Zhanghong had already followed Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue's gaze. Not far away, among the kings of the Big Dipper Sword sect, Yi Xing was standing side by side with Vast Sky Emperor. Only 6 years had passed. Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun naturally remembered Yi Xing, the champion of the Dark Star Godly Palace's disciple recruitment competition. Both of their gazes were filled with sighs. Who would have thought that Yi Xing would have such a promising future? Seeing the two quasi-gods land on him, Yi Xing nodded from afar. Feng Junyue touched the mighty sky-shaking sword in his hand, and his eyes were full of fighting spirit. He said, "For the past few years, we've been bullied by the Celestial Palace. Now that we finally have the strength to fight back, we can't just stand here. Senior brother Zhanghong, senior sister Minjun, since you're here, let's attack together. Today we'll vent our anger." Lu Zhanghong shouted, "All right." For the past 2 years, Star Silver Death and the others have been attacking the Giant Spirit sect. We've almost lost 10 to 20% of our Dynasty Dragon luck. Today, we'll let the Celestial Palace have a taste of our power." Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junyue continued to take out their middle-grade divine weapons. Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun also attacked. The 4 quasi-gods attacked the Dynasty Dragon luck of the Celestial Palace fiercely. Terrifying explosions shook the heavens and the earth. Not long after Lu Zhanghong and Qiu Minjun arrived, Star Silver Death and the others arrived as well. Astral Elephant Palace, Devil Ceiling Valley, Dark Moon Temple, and Golden Lion Sect, a total of 4 sects experts. Among them, Astral Elephant Palace had 3 quasi-god realm experts, Devil Ceiling Valley had 3 quasi-god realm experts, Dark Moon Temple had 1 quasi-god realm expert, and Golden Lion Sect had 1 quasi-god realm expert. The number of kings was in the hundreds, and there were dozens of high-level kings who were peerless emperors. 8 quasi-gods, dozens of high-level kings, and hundreds of beginner and mid-level kings gathered together. Needless to say, Their aura was strong. The wind and clouds in the sky cleared a path, and the air billowed. It was as if a prehistoric divine beast was moving. From afar, Feng Hanqiu and the others sensed the arrival of Star Silver Death and the others. They stopped attacking, and the two sides soon faced each other in the sky outside the Celestial Palace. Chapter 858. At this time, Yi Xing attacked like a ghost. He activated the Vermilion Bird Star Phase and shot out astral arrows. The Frozen King was hit by the astral arrows and instantly shattered into pieces. Although the 7 Star Kings weren't sealed in ice, their speed was slowed down. How could they dodge Yi Xing's attack? Their heads were instantly crushed by the astral arrow. The majority of the kings present had only constructed a low-grade king body. Those who had constructed a mid-grade king body could be counted on one hand. Whether it was low-grade or mid-grade king bodies, the head was a vital point. Once the head was crushed, the king would naturally die. When Yi Xing attacked, he was like a life reaper. Wherever he passed, the kings of the 4 forces would die one after another. Even the 7 Star Kings couldn't resist the joint attack of Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian. Yi Xing attacked more than a dozen times in the blink of an eye. In just a few breaths of time, dozens of kings had died under Yi Xing's hands. None of them had an intact corpse. Although kings didn't have undying bodies, their vitality was still very strong. Usually, in a battle between kings, as long as the disparity in strength wasn't too great, it wouldn't be easy to kill the other party. Killing them in one blow was even more difficult. Between kings, there had to be a gap of 1 realm in strength to have a great chance of killing the other party. And to kill them in one blow, there had to be a gap of 2 or even 3 realms. For Yi Xing to kill more than a dozen kings in the blink of an eye, that was too shocking. However, if one understood Yi Xing and Wei Qingxuan's strength, the result wouldn't be so shocking. When the two were still kings, Yi Xing already had the strength to kill a 7-star king. Wei Qingxian was also invincible under the 7-star king realm. Now, the two of them had become 4-star kings. They had broken through from the initial stage to the mid-stage king realm. Their strength had increased tremendously. Yi Xing's strength had probably reached the level of being able to kill an 8-star king. As for Wei Qingxian, she was at the peak of 7-star kings. Just think about it, if a 7-star ruler and an 8-star ruler joined forces, how terrifying would their strength be? Wei Qingxuan's attacks had the ability to freeze and control the enemy's movements. Yi Xing's attacks were extremely fast and powerful. They had terrifying penetrative power and destructive power. When the two of them worked together, one controlled the enemy while the other killed the enemy. Naturally, the effect of killing the enemy was doubled. It was much more terrifying than when a 7-star ruler and an 8-star ruler worked together. Killing the other party's kings was naturally like cutting grass. Although there were many kings in the Starry Crescent land, they were not as common as cabbages. Every time one of them died, it would be a great loss. How could they withstand Yi Xing's swift harvest? In less than 10 breaths of time, Yi Xing had already killed more than 10 kings. The number of kings that died in his hands was much more than the total number of kings that died in the hands of the Big Dipper sword sect. In just a few breaths of time, more than 10% of the kings of the 4 major powers had died. This result was out of everyone's expectations, and it was shocking. The Big Dipper sword sect's cultivators were naturally overjoyed. However, the kings of the 4 major powers were incomparably shocked. Even the emperors of the Starry Crescent realm were terrified of Yi Xing. None of them dared to make a move against Yi Xing. Since the other party did not take the initiative to attack, Yi Xing took the initiative to attack. Yi Xing was in the front, and Wei Qingxian was behind him. Wei Qingxuan's speed was 100 li in a breath. Her sovereign bloodline was activated, and she struck out with her icy palms. Although the attack power was not strong, it had a great effect on the enemy kings. Only 8-star emperors could rely on their strength to ignore the attack of this cold chi. The azure cloud wings opened behind Yi Xing's back. Yi Xing's speed was even faster than Wei Qingxuan's, reaching 100 li in a breath. Every time Wei Qingxian attacked with her cold chi, Yi Xing would be the first to attack. For a time, wherever Yi Xing went, the enemy kings would retreat as if they had seen a ghost. But even so, there were still many kings who died under Yi Xing's hands. After all, Yi Xing's speed was too fast, much faster than 7-star emperors. In addition to Wei Qingxuan's cold chi attacks, ordinary kings would not be able to dodge in time. The deaths of the kings of the four major powers boosted the morale of the Big Dipper sword sex kings.
Yi Xing die!
Suddenly, a loud roar resounded. A king realm expert wielding a supreme-grade profound weapon charged towards Yi Xing. It was an emperor of the Starry Crescent realm. Although the battle was chaotic and the people from both sides were mixed together, the general area where the kings of both sides were located was still very clear. Yi Xing killed his way through, so he naturally went deeper into the enemy's territory. The emperor of the Celestial Elephant Palace, the Golden Monkey Emperor, had long been paying attention to Yi Xing. When he fought with the great emperor of the Big Dipper sword sect, he didn't charge forward. He was in a position where he could fight or retreat. When he saw Yi Xing going deeper into his territory, he immediately retreated and whipped out his supreme-grade profound weapon, the Golden Dragon Truncheon. How terrifying was the might of an 8-star emperor's attack! The void was compressed by the truncheon, and the trees and plants below were crushed into dust. Even the ground cracked open. If this truncheon landed, it would definitely cause the earth to crack and mountains to crumble. A huge crater would be formed in a radius of 10 li. Wei Qingxuan's frosty palm print covered a distance of more than 10 miles. But the Golden Monkey King's figure was not weakened by the frosty air at all. In half a blink of an eye, he was already in front of Yi Xing. Moreover, as soon as the Golden Monkey Emperor attacked, another 7-star emperor attacked Wei Qingxian. With the Golden Monkey Emperor dealing with Yi Xing, the 7-star emperor wasn't afraid of Wei Qingxian. It seemed long, but it all happened in an instant. The Golden Monkey Emperor was too fast. Although Yi Xing wasn't slower than his opponent, he couldn't maintain his top speed forever. There was a time gap between every move. As long as he seized the opportunity, it was normal for the slower one to hit the faster one. Otherwise, with Yi Xing's speed, which was close to 200 li in a breath, and the Golden Monkey Emperor could only reach 150 li in a breath. Wouldn't that mean that as long as Yi Xing was moving, the Golden Monkey Emperor would never be able to hit Yi Xing? Of course not. For example, at this moment, the Golden Monkey Emperor's truncheon came at the same time as Yi Xing's 2 moves. Yi Xing couldn't avoid it. Since he couldn't avoid it, he could only face it head-on. The Golden Flame Bow immediately appeared in Yi Xing's hand. With a burst of violent power, the shadow of the Golden Flame Bow shot out with an explosive sound. The Golden Monkey Emperor's power was too terrifying. The shadow of the Golden Flame Bow was destroyed in one strike. The Golden Dragon Truncheon and the Golden Flame Bow collided violently. The Golden Dragon Truncheon focused on power, while the Golden Flame Bow focused on shooting. In a head-on collision, the Golden Flame Bow was naturally at a disadvantage. Moreover, Yi Xing's power was much weaker than the Golden Monkey Emperor's. As the Golden Flame Bow bent and shot, Yi Xing was instantly sent flying like a cannonball. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.